Ace has been sitting cross-legged alone in the cell for the past 2 days, because of the lessons learned from the bald head before, and no one who is not open-eyed dares to trouble Ace. But this afternoon, Ace was a little restless. He felt that the fire he had put into the butler's body was getting closer and closer to him. What does this mean? The butler was actually chasing them. Where does his confidence come from? You must know that, not to mention the strength of Ace and other students, there is a quasi-general named Zephyr on this warship. Ace wanted to detonate the fire, but found that he was still in a weak stage. At least he would not be able to recover until night, but judging by the speed at which the fire was approaching, it is estimated that the opponent had already caught up with them before Ace recovered. Is anyone there? Come on. Ace thought for a while, but decided to tell Zephyr the news first. But just as he spoke, all the prisoners in the cell trembled in fright and looked over in horror. Ace couldn't help but smile, and he didn't intend to do anything to them, so there's no need to be so scared. It seems that the psychological shadow caused by the tragic situation of the bald head is indeed a bit big. Keep down. After hearing Ace's voice, 2 guards walked in from outside the cell, and one of the guards said impatiently, "What's the matter with you? Tell me." "I want to see Teacher Zephyr. Please go and inform me that Ace has something urgent to report," Ace said eagerly, not having time to care about the attitude of the guards. "Ha. Do you want to see Master Zephyr?" "I want to too, ha ha ha." The guard sneered, "You criminals just stay here and don't disturb my rest." Don't say it." Another guard heard what Ace said, but suddenly remembered something, pulled the sleeve of the first guard, and said in a soft voice, You didn't hear his name was Master Zephyr just now, and you don't think this name is very familiar." Only then did the first guard come to his senses, and remembered that Ace was the one discussed earlier, the youngest elite student. Suddenly his head was covered with cold sweat. No matter why Ace was locked up here, it was a big man who couldn't be bullied by him. The guard immediately put on a respectful expression, and kept nodding and bowing in apology. Seeing the prisoners around, they almost thought they were blind. Who has ever seen a prison officer be so polite to a prisoner? Suddenly they looked at Ace even more in awe. But Ace didn't have time to pay attention to him at all. Just for a while, the speed of the butler's fire approaching was a bit faster, and he said anxiously, "Don't be dazed, hurry up and inform Teacher Zephyr." This time, the 2 guards also understood that what Ace was going to say must not be a trivial matter, so after looking at each other, they ran out of the cell together immediately, fearing that the business would be delayed. But Ace waited left and right in the cell, and the more he waited, the more anxious he became, only to find that the 2 guards never came back with anyone. How did he know that the guards had indeed gone to find Zephyr? But Zephyr was currently in the conference room, using the phone bug to contact the Navy headquarters. Therefore, if the guards want to see Zephyr, they can only honestly wait for the notice outside the door. At this moment, in the warship meeting room, Waring states, "I asked you to look up Bahai Virgo's information. Have you found it?" Zephyr was sitting in the middle of the conference room with a toothpick in his mouth and a phone bug in his hand. "Hey, Zephyr. I'm now an admiral of the Navy. Please show me some face." Opposite the phone bug is the current admiral of the Navy, the Warring States of Buddha. "Stop talking nonsense, I'm bothered." Zephyr didn't mean to give the Warring States any face at all. They were comrades in arms who joined the army at the same time, so there were so many rules. Sure enough, Zepha's attitude didn't annoy Sengoku at all. Sengoku was in the headquarters of the Navy at this time, with a plaque of the Navy's absolute justice hanging behind him. He reached out and touched a goat beside him, and replied, "You know that AHE has been in charge of the affairs of Don Quixote's family. As soon as you called me the day before yesterday, I immediately informed AHE to investigate. The result is not very satisfactory. There is no Virgo in Don Quixote. Signs that the family has acted." When Zephyr heard Sengoku's words, his heart sank suddenly. He would not think that Ace was lying, but if there was no evidence, some guys in the Navy would not let Ace go easily. However, this Virgo is really problematic. He joined the Navy 6 years ago, and his previous resume was perfect. But it was too perfect, as if it had been carefully designed. Sengoku's voice was a little heavy, and continued said, "And 1 year ago, Rosandy's death was too strange. It's as if someone revealed the actions of the Navy to Don Quixote in advance." Zephyr didn't speak immediately. He had also heard about Rosandy's affairs, and knew the status of this person in Zhongguo's heart. To Zhongguo, this person was like his own son. And Rosindi is also called Klazan, the younger brother of Doflamingo and Luo's benefactor. But you have to know that these are just my personal guesses and cannot be used as evidence. But don't worry, although I haven't seen the ace boy you mentioned, I believe your vision is definitely right. Warring states will of course choose to believe in Zephyr. After all, in terms of vision, Zephyr in the Navy is said to be the second, and no one dares to be the first. Don't worry, I will continue to send people to investigate, and I won't let others wrong this kid. Zephyr could only nod his head, responded twice, and stopped discussing Ace's affairs, but continued to discuss other military affairs with Sengoku. It's just that he didn't know that 2 guards had been waiting outside the door for almost 2 hours. But it was Ace in the cell who was more anxious, seeing that his period of weakness was still an hour away, and it would only take half an hour for the butler's fire to catch up with him. He didn't dare to delay any longer, and he gritted his teeth and walked to the iron railing of the cage. Ace was actually wearing Heilushi handcuffs on both hands, but his flame ability didn't come from the devil fruit. I saw a little stagnant water on the ground, but suddenly a white mist rose from the high temperature, and traces of blue flames rose from the soles of Ace's feet, and gradually spread to the iron railing in front of him, and dozens of railings suddenly became pillar of fire. The prisoners around looked at Ace, who was shrouded in flames, their eyes widened in horror, and they kept backing away from him as much as possible. God. Is this a demon? Ace didn't care about the thoughts of these prisoners. He is now in a weak stage, his strength is only 1/10 of his original strength, and he is already very reluctant to control the strange fire. The veins on his forehead were exposed, and his eyes were fixed on the iron railing in front of him, watching it gradually change from deep red to bright yellow, and then slowly melt. Ace understands that these iron railings have been heated to at least 600 degrees. You must know that ordinary flames are only about 400 degrees, reaching such a high temperature. After an unknown amount of time, the blue flame retracted into Ace's body. And the originally strong cage, like a ferocious animal claw, was torn apart by the flames. The surrounding prisoners had no one to stand, and some even peed their pants from the horror of the scene. Ace took a few short breaths, and was surprised to find that the Heilushi handcuffs on his hands remained unchanged. He secretly lamented that this magical substance was indeed extremely hard. But it doesn't matter. Ace's eyes were serious, he stepped hard, and disappeared into the cell with a whoosh in the next second. At this moment, there are still 15 minutes before Wabel and others chase after him. The movement of the cell had already alarmed the guards. Seeing a prisoner rushing out of the cell with his hands in shackles, the sailors immediately stood in front of Ace. Don't move. Some sailors even took out their muskets and pointed them at the galloping Ace. Bang bang bang. Seeing that Ace didn't intend to stop at all, the sailors shot without hesitation. Boom. Ace slammed his right foot on the deck, accelerated suddenly, knocked over several sailors with a swish, and ran past their defense line, and the bullets fired at him also lost their target and shot into the wall. Anxious in my heart, Ace has no time to entangle with these sailors. The speed didn't drop at all. Ace went straight to the captain's cabin, and it didn't take long before he rushed to the front of the captain's cabin. Because the time was too urgent, Ace kicked the cabin door open. Teacher Zephyr, I have something important to report. Ace looked anxious, but it was only halfway through the conversation that he realized that there was no sign of Zephyr in the captain's cabin. Only 1,000 second stage students stayed here. Ace? Binz frowned. Brother. Ain and Drake were overjoyed at first, but then they were both a little worried. Ace would be fine if he escaped. Where is Mr. Zephyr? Tell me quickly. Ace looked anxious. In the meeting room. A student was stunned and said it. Ace didn't say anything, turned around and left. Whoosh. Suddenly, Binz stood in front of Ace, and said solemnly, Ace, after all, you are still in custody. I hope you can go back first. If you have anything to say, we will bring it to Teacher Zephyr. Get out of the way. I don't have time to talk to you now. Ace said in a deep voice, and now there are only 10 minutes left before Tinder catches up. Base. Binz didn't speak, but he pulled out the samurai sword behind his back, apparently not intending to get out of the way. Ace paused his footsteps, his eyes became a little cold. Now that everyone was about to face a crisis, he had no time to continue talking nonsense. Call. A wave of purple fire suddenly gushed out of Ace's body. Although he couldn't control the strange fire with his current physical condition, it was more than enough to use the purple fire. Go away. What? How is that possible? Binz on the side stared wide-eyed. Obviously I've already handcuffed you with Heilushi. How can you still use your abilities? Surprised, Binz was not ready to give up just like that. He raised his hand and sprinkled a handful of dense seeds in the direction of Ace. Then, a strange dance was performed on the spot, and he shouted. Flourishing, lush. In an instant, those seeds germinated and grew out of thin air following Binz's dance, and soon grew into a vine of several meters, winding towards Ace's body. Ace understands that this is the ability of lush fruit. Frowning, he will use the purple fire to spread over. But Ain rushed between Ace and Binz at this moment, and the pink light in his hand hit the plants that had grown wildly. Back, back. Swoosh, these plants just got smaller and smaller, turned into seeds again, and finally disappeared out of thin air. This is not over yet. Drake also instantly released the ability of the Tyrannosaur fruit, turning into a half-beast form, holding weapons in both hands and confronting Binz. Brother Ace, we are here, you go. After saying this, Ian also rushed to Drake to help. Ace's heart warmed, but he understood that now was not the time to waste time, so he immediately turned his head and rushed into the cabin of the warship, and rushed to the meeting room as fast as he could. When I got there, I found that the guards of the two cells were still waiting at the door. There was no time to blame the two, so Ace slammed open the door of the meeting room. When he looked up, he saw Zephyr, who was still holding the phone bug in his hand. Teacher Zephyr. Ace said with a happy face, Teacher, I feel an enemy approaching. Get ready. Zephyr hung up the phone, looked at Ace, who was still wearing the shackles of Hylu stone, frowned and asked, What's going on? The sound insulation effect of the meeting room is very good, and Zephyr is also concentrating on discussing military affairs with Sengoku, so he didn't notice the movement outside. I have a unique ability that can sense the approach of the enemy. This time it should be the pursuers sent by the Don Quixote family. I don't know the strength of the opponent, but I must be sure if I dare to chase us. Ace finished speaking in one breath, and it was less than 5 minutes before the opponent caught up with the warship. Drip, woo, but before Zephyr could reply, an alarm sounded on the warship, and the expressions of Ace and Zephyr couldn't help but change at the same time. The key to the handcuffs is on the desk in my room. Go and untie the handcuffs. I'll go out and have a look. Zephyr ran straight out of the cabin after speaking. And Ace didn't stop, and immediately went straight to Zephy's room. At this time, behind the warship, a small steamship was chasing at several times the speed of the warship. And Wabel was holding his huge crescent knife, standing on the bow of the outer ship, sniffing his nose and giggling. Son, 100 million Pele is waving to us, haha. Miss Bajan had a cruel smile on her face. She tapped the deck with her cane, and said with a big grin, Go. As long as you kill all the people on board, I will take you to eat your favorite octopus balls. Eat your fill. Thank you, Mama. Wabel's eyes lit up, and he responded with a big tongue. Afterwards, across tens of meters of sea surface, Wabel slashed fiercely at the warship. The tip of the knife cut across the air in an instant, and then a huge knife aura of more than 10 meters split the waves and flew straight towards the warship. On the originally calm sea surface, the seawater was split to the two sides by the saber air, forming a dark trench. After a while, the saber air slashed directly at the tail of the warship. Click, click. Amidst a toothache cracking sound, the saber energy was directly embedded in it, and it looked like a broken bamboo. It is estimated that it could directly cut the warship in half. You dare. Suddenly, there was a thundering roar from above the warship, and Zfa's figure suddenly appeared at the tail of the warship, his fists already covered with a layer of jet black and shiny armed domineering. Facing this terrifying knife aura, Zephyr punched it without hesitation. Boom. The sword energy finally stopped in front of Zfa's fist, and the collision between the two released a huge wave of air, sending dozens of sailors flying into the sea. What? Zephyr saw his eyes tearing apart, and after a loud roar, an even more terrifying force was released from his fist, and finally smashed the saber energy with one punch. Falling back on the deck, Zephyr looked at the messy warship, and then at Wabel, who was holding a big knife on the opposite side. Zephyr squeezed out 5 words from between his teeth with anger. The pinnacle of the Quasi-General? Are you sent by Doflamingo? Hey, Mama said that as long as you kill you, you will have money. Wabel didn't care about Zephyr at all, and just said something with a smirk. How could Zephyr still not understand their purpose of coming, and secretly thought that Ace was telling the truth, and he made up his mind to make up for Ace when he turned around. At this time, the steamship was close enough to the warship, so Wabel bent his legs slightly, then jumped onto the warship tens of meters high, and slashed at Zephyr in the air. Humph. Seeing that the opponent ignored him at all, Zephyr punched him with a livid face, and bumped into Wabel's big knife fiercely. But Zephyr underestimated Wabel's power, and his blade was covered with a layer of black domineering. At this time, Zephyr cut back 2 steps abruptly, and even appeared on Zfa's fist. A bloodstain. You. There was a shocked expression on ZFA's face. He didn't expect that the guy in front of him who had been smirking all the time had strength and arrogance that were stronger than his own. Son, get rid of those minions first. At this moment, Miss Bajan's disgusting voice came from far behind the warship. Oh. Wabel scratched his head in doubt, but agreed anyway. Then, he rushed into those ordinary sailors wielding the crescent knife, and dozens of sailors fell into a pool of blood after a few cuts, and even smirked, and kept making up for the seriously injured sailors. Damn you. How could Zephyr watch his sea soldiers being slaughtered, and immediately rushed up with red eyes? Boom. 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 Zephyr punched Wabel one after another, and the arm-domineering color on his arm became darker. This crazy momentum made him seem to have returned to the era of black-armed Zephyr. However, he is 65 years old after all, and after a moment of competition, he was already a little out of breath, and he was obviously at a disadvantage. At this moment, several students from the naval base rushed over because of the movement at the tail of the warship. Teacher Zephyr. Seeing that the teacher was in crisis, the students rushed over anxiously, drawing their weapons to help. Do not come. There was fear in ZFA's voice. He had no family for a long time. His family was killed by pirates more than 10 years ago. He devoted the rest of his life to teaching the students. These students are his hope. But the enemy in front of him, how can these fledgling students can deal with it? He didn't want to see these children die in front of him. However, because of the roar of the battle, the students couldn't hear Ching Zfa's words at the first time, and they had already rushed to the edge of the battlefield. Among them, there is the second swordsman Ren, who held a knife in both hands and slashed towards Wabel's back. Clang. The sharp samurai sword slashed on Wabel's body, leaving no white marks. Huh. Why is it itchy? Wabel scratched his head, turned his head to look behind him, and when he saw Ren and others, he smirked and said, "Mama, let me kill them first." After finishing speaking, he slashed at the students with a backhand knife. The sharp light of the knife released a chill, which made a look of despair appear on their faces. Do not. Under such circumstances, Zephyr recovered a bit of his speed as a general, suddenly blocked the students, raised his arm, and pushed his armed force to the extreme, trying to resist Wabel's attack with his own arm. This blow. Click. Accompanied by the sound of clashing gold and iron, Wabel's broadsword actually broke through Zfa's armed color again, and cut a hideous wound on his arm. The aftermath of the collision shook the students behind Zephyr to fly high, and they passed out in the air with blood sprayed. There was even a student who was cut in two because he was just swept by the saber energy. Zephyr was distraught, but still tried his best to resist the aftermath with his body, trying to fight for a chance for the remaining students to survive. But this gave Wabel enough time to mobilize the strength of his whole body. In a moment, the tip of the knife condensed a 3-foot-thick knife gang and slashed at Zephyr fiercely. This blow was obviously Wabel's full strength. Zephyr even felt a trace of general-level power from this knife, but he didn't even think about avoiding it. He just gritted his teeth again, mobilized his armed forces with all his strength, and threw a punch at Wabel desperately. He understood that he couldn't stop this knife, but how could he expose the students behind him to this lunatic's sword? Just when Zephyr felt that his arm was about to lose its hold this time. Suddenly, an old woman's hoarse cry came from behind the warship. "Baby son, I'm going to die, come and save me." Hum. The blade on Wabel's broadsword suddenly dissipated, and the smirk on his face disappeared without a trace. He looked towards the rear of the warship in some horror. Ma. Ma ma. Then, ignoring Zephyr again, he ran directly to the tail of the warship, stretched his neck, and looked at the steamship behind. At this moment, on the steamship, there is one more figure. It is Ace, who has already unlocked the handcuffs with the key. When Ace saw Wabel's obese figure before, he remembered his identity, and realized that with Wabel's IQ, it was impossible to act independently. There must be an old woman named Miss Bajan behind the command, so he did not without hesitation, he rushed to the steamboat from the side. Now, he was holding the Crimson Devil Slayer broadsword in one hand, and the struggling Miss Bajan in the other, looking calmly at Wabel at the stern of the warship. Beside Ace, there is still a pile of black ashes that are slowly being blown away by the sea breeze. It is the butler Gear who led Wabel here. Without this guy, this crisis would be impossible to talk about, so burning Gear to ashes, Ace's heart can't even raise a wave. Damn him. Wabel. If you move again, I'll kill this old woman. Miss Ba Jin is ruthless and cruel, and can even trick Wabel into massacring civilians, so Ace will not feel any burden in killing her. Zephyr also saw Ace's actions at this time, and felt a little grateful in his heart, that he was actually saved by the students. "You dare to touch me?" Ah! But Wabel's reaction was completely beyond Ace's expectations. Maybe his IQ couldn't think too much, so he didn't care about Miss Bajan's life or death at all. He jumped up directly, raised his knife and slashed at Ace. "Don't come here, you idiot." But the most frightening thing is not Ace, but Miss Bajan in Ace's hands. In fact, Wabel is not her son at all, and their relationship with Whitebeard is all made up by her. Wabel's IQ is low, so she can easily make up stories to control him, but she really didn't expect Wabel to be so stupid. "Why don't you talk to this person about the terms? If you rush over here, don't you want my life?" Ace didn't expect the other party to play cards so unconventional, but since Miss Bajan couldn't limit Wabel, how could Ace still keep this poisonous woman alive in the world? Wabel may not be evil in nature, but there is a very sinister Miss Bajan behind him. "I don't know how many innocent people this woman has killed. Go." Ace raised his hand suddenly, and threw Miss Bajan towards Wabel's sword. Although Wabel is powerful, his head's reaction speed is really a little slow. When he saw the black shadow hitting him, he thought it was a hidden weapon, and subconsciously swung his knife and slashed at it. "Do not!" Miss Bajan yelled out in despair, but it was too late. Puff! The broadsword cut Miss Bajan in half instantly, and scarlet blood sprayed from the air. The body of Miss Bajan fell into the seawater. Wabel fell and hit the deck of the steamship. And Ace jumped up early, retreated to the stern of the steamship, and distanced himself from Wabel. At this moment, there was still 1 minute before he recovered his strength. Looking at the blood on the machete, Wabel froze in place and didn't move for a moment. The moment he hit it, he already knew that it was Miss Bajan. He lowered his head slightly, his pupils dilated, making him look even more stupid, and he kept murmuring in a low voice. "Mama, mama. Boom, boom. Dong dong." The sound of Wabel's heart beating became stronger and stronger, and his body size also expanded and contracted with the sound of the heartbeat. Ace found Wabel's aura gradually getting stronger with a serious expression on his face. What is the strength above the pinnacle of the quasi-general? Needless to say, Ace also knew that he was a general. "Teacher Zephyr. We can't wait any longer, let's do it together," Ace shouted anxiously, and he suddenly remembered that Wabel was actually a devil fruit user. But now looking at the form of ability it displays, is it that the more stupid the brain, the stronger the physical ability? There was no time to complain. Ace knelt down on one knee, and suddenly inserted Devil Demon into the deck of the steamship, sipping in a low voice. "Flame Ring Fire Pillar." As soon as the words fell, purple flames swirled and gushed out from Ace's body, gradually forming a flaming purple pillar of fire, which surrounded his body heavily. Boom! The pillar of fire plunged downwards, forcibly piercing through the deck of the steamship, and blasted a hole 2 to 3 meters in diameter at the bottom of the ship. Ace actually wanted to sink the ship, using the weakness of the Devil Fruit ability user's inability to swim. Let Wabel fall directly into the seawater, so that he could win without a fight. Moonstep. Ashley stepped on the air and leapt into the air, while the seawater poured into the cabin crazily. The hull of the steamship kept tilting to one side, and it would soon sink to the bottom of the sea. But at this moment, Wabel's eyes suddenly opened, and the next second he disappeared in place, suddenly jumped into the air, and appeared above Ace. He punched Ace directly, and Ace couldn't dodge this punch, it was too fast. Quick! Quick! Ace looked at the instant fist. The veins on his forehead were already bulging, and an eager cry sounded in his heart. Finally, at the last moment, the period of weakness finally passed. Without hesitation at all, Ace activated the Spirit Fire Essence body art in an instant, bursting out with 4 times the strength of his body, and the Cyan Qinglian Earth Heartfire emerged on his arms. He even mobilized the armed arrogance of his whole body, covering the front of his body. The strength that Ace displayed at this moment has truly reached the level of an elite lieutenant general. But the next moment, there was a sudden roar at the scene. Boom! Wabel's fist directly hit Ace's crossed arms in front of him, and then Ace was slammed down from the air, and fell to the surface of the sea with a whoosh. Puff! Ace's figure disappeared, leaving only a trail of his spurted blood in the air. But the strange fire on Ace's arms suddenly wrapped around Wabel's fist, and the severe pain made him let out a scream, until the fist was full of bones, and he barely used his arrogance to dispel the remaining strange fire. This is where the strange fire is terrifying. Even if Ace is far inferior to the opponent, he can still burn the enemy with the terrifying high temperature of the strange fire. Ace. And at this time, Zephyr had time to rush over, and the student he was most optimistic about died just like that. In ZFA's eyes, Ace and Wable are two big realms behind. Can a punch be good? What's more, the devil fruit ability user was blasted into the bottom of the sea. How could he still have a chance to survive? The anger in ZFA's heart is hard to describe in words. He has already fallen into madness. He doesn't care if this Wable is a fool, killing his subordinates, killing his students. If he doesn't cut him into pieces, it will be difficult to dispel the pain in ZFA's heart hatred. No longer thinking about his own life at all, Zephyr raised his thumb with his right hand, concentrated his arrogance to the tip of the thumb, and thrust his backhand into his chest. The arrogance directly rushed into his heart. Hum. Dong dong. ZFA's body was stiff at first, and his heart beat wildly, and then the sense of power belonging to the elite general reappeared in his body. Puff. ZFA's expression was ferocious. He pulled out his finger, and brought out a stream of blood, stimulating his heart with arrogance. It was an absolute desperate move, which could make him have the peak strength of the year within 10 minutes. But even if he survived by luck, his strength will always drop by another level. But so what? A monstrous killing intent erupted from ZFA's body, powerful forces continued to emerge, and the armed arrogance covering his hands seemed to be devouring the light at this moment. At this moment, he seems to have become the world-famous admiral again, the black-armed Zephyr. Die. A word popped out between ZFA's teeth, and then disappeared out of thin air with a swish. Wable's body was falling at this time, but he didn't expect Zephyr to suddenly appear beside him. Without any nonsense, the pitch-black fist had already slammed straight into his head. Boom. Wable had fought Zephyr before, and thought that Zephyr was still in his original strength. But at the moment when the fists clashed, a terrifying force belonging to the elite general rushed into his arm. Click. Wable's wrist was broken by ZFA's punch, and a small bone stubble was exposed through the skin. But Zephyr unexpectedly found that Wable's face didn't show a trace of pain. He was still smirking, and just stabbed Zephyr with a bone stubble. ZFA's pupils shrank. This scene was indeed creepy, but Zephyr had experienced many battles and judged that it might be the opponent's devil fruit ability, so of course he would not be frightened. After dodging, a series of fists rained down on Wable's body. Wable was trembling all over from the powerful force. His body was like chaff, and the corners of his mouth were dripping with blood. But he just smirked like this, and was beaten by Zephyr for 5 minutes in a row. Except for occasionally raising his hand to block his vitals, there was no more action. Hoo. Zephyr gasped heavily, and a haze appeared on his face. He knew that as long as he kept attacking like this, sooner or later the opponent would collapse. But how long is this time? There are only 5 minutes left for him to maintain his strength as a general. Swish. Zephyr took 2 steps back and landed on the wreckage of a steamship. His short purple hair shook slightly in the sea breeze, his knees were slightly bent, and his right fist was clenched back to the right side of his abdomen. And Wable has suffered so many punches, but he has no tendency to lose consciousness, and he also fell on the wreckage. The secret of Z. Hero straight fist. Zephyr yelled out the name of the second class, but he didn't feel embarrassed at all. Maybe the hero Z is the ideal self in ZFA's heart. The right fist that was received in the abdomen was aimed at Wable 10 meters away, and a straight punch was thrown without fancy. The move is simple, but it is ZFA's strongest attack as an elite general. Wable didn't have time to feel that something was wrong. The sea between him and Zephyr suddenly sank, and a cylindrical trench with a radius of tens of meters appeared. The next second, Wable felt an unrivaled shockwave. It fell on me. Rumbling, Wable spat out blood. His body was distorted by the powerful force, and just like that, he was blown away tens of meters away. Pat. Wable fell from the sky like a dead object, but instead of falling into the sea, he fell right on top of a piece of deck wreck blown by the fist wind. At this moment, the strength in ZFA's body receded like a tide. His face became pale. He withdrew his fist, and sat down on the wreckage. He felt that his strength might fall to the rank of lieutenant general this time. But looking at Wable from a distance, whose body has been distorted beyond human shape, Zephyr breathed a sigh of relief. Click. Kacha kacha. At this moment, a series of dense joint impacts sounded from Wable's body, and his fat body trembled just like that. ZFA's face changed drastically. He is still alive? Zephyr watched Wable's body recover slowly with the click of joints, and finally he just stood up like this. Seeing his back, Zephyr gritted his teeth and stood up again. If Wable wanted to rush to the direction of the warship to slaughter ZFA's students, he would have to step over his corpse. He is ready to die. But after a while, Wable didn't turn around, but stepped on a wooden plank, using a big knife as an oar. and was about to flee away from the warship. Even Weibel's IQ, under the strength of Zephyr, has already felt the fear. And Zephyr was stunned for a moment, and then realized that the opponent's strong recovery ability should have an upper limit, and it should have reached the limit now. It's just. I can't avenge the revenge of Ace and those dead sailors. Zephyr looked up to the sky and sighed, with tears streaming from the corners of his eyes. He was now powerless to chase Weibel. Weibel was frantically trying to escape, unable to fight anymore, but he was about to breathe a sigh of relief when he found that Zephyr wasn't coming after him. Goo! Suddenly, Zephyr saw from a distance that the seawater under Weibel's feet suddenly became agitated, and countless bubbles appeared. In the bottom of the sea, faint cyan light flashed, and seafish rolled their eyes and floated to the surface of the sea, as if they were cooked by a terrible high temperature in an instant. Chingly unfolding flames / 40 layers. The deep voice seemed to penetrate the seawater and reach everyone's ears. As soon as the sound fell, the glaring blue light penetrated the sea surface, and a large amount of steam evaporated. A cyan flame sword energy more than 10 meters long split the seawater into two, and split the deck under Weibel's feet from bottom to top, and then cut to his body. How could Weibel's domineering energy, which was nearly exhausted, be able to block the terrifying heat of the strange fire? With a puff, the sword energy swept across his body. Weibel, who was still waving a big knife and paddling frantically, froze in place for an instant. The expression on his face was full of disbelief, and then a clear sword mark suddenly appeared in the center of his body, splitting it in two. Call. The cyan flame suddenly ignited, burning it into a flaming lotus flower in an instant, and finally slowly turning it into ashes. Thump. Under the surface of the sea, Ace rushed out in some embarrassment. After jumping on a wreckage, he immediately lay down, coughed twice, and spit out a mouthful of blood. Ace smiled bitterly and said to himself, I just recovered from the week period. Come here. I guess I'll lie down for another week. But this time I finally avenged those sailors. Moreover, the crisis that has been tense for more than a year is over. Ace exhaled. Ace. Zephyr struggled and jumped over, and asked in surprise, how can you use your ability underwater? Of course Ace can. After all, the flame ability he uses now comes from the different fire system, not the devil fruit from the world of One Piece. Although he doesn't have the ability to transform his body into elements, he doesn't have to be afraid of seawater. It's good to survive. It's good to survive. Seeing that Ace didn't answer or ask questions, Zephyr just seemed to have exhausted his strength and fell to Ace's side. This extremely strong old man, because of Ace's survival, smiled and stayed behind. A tear. However, he secretly wiped it away in the blink of an eye, and no one saw it. The intense exhaustion after the fierce battle made the two of them just lie on the wreckage and fell asleep. In a blur, Ace saw the remaining students on the warship rushing over. After this encounter, the losses were counted. Of the 156 sailors on the warship, 32 died and 54 were injured, of which 12 were seriously injured that would inevitably lead to disability. There were 19 cadets at the naval base, 1 died and 6 were seriously injured. And Zephyr and Ace have been unconscious after the fierce battle, which can be said to have suffered heavy losses. But they also left the pirate Weibel with a bounty of over 400 million in this sea forever. Looking at the corpses covered with white cloths, and the pale-faced companions who still gritted their teeth and endured the severe pain, the remaining sailors on board all hated that Weibel to the bone. When they heard that it was Ace who finally cut Weibel in half, they all admired and loved this child who was younger than them from the bottom of their hearts. When the nurses in the infirmary were helping Ace with the wound, they were subconsciously more careful. Looking at his pale face, they couldn't help feeling pity. If they knew that, according to the original script, everyone on the warship except Ain and Binz would be killed by Weibel, including Zephyr would have an arm cut off, I am afraid that the admiration and gratitude for Ace would be even greater. Strong. Of course, Ace would not take the initiative to say these words. After he fell into a coma, Ian stayed by his hospital bed and took care of him meticulously. Compared with professional nurses, he can only be said to be so careful. More than anything. After the Navy headquarters received the news that Zephyr was attacked, they immediately dispatched 3 warships from the nearest base to escort them, so after a week, they finally arrived at the Navy headquarters Marlin Vander without any danger. The Navy headquarters has always been a symbol of power and justice. It is located in the center of the Great Waterway, adjacent to the Chambord Islands, the Red Earth continent, and the Holy Land, Malaysia. 4 warships slowly sailed into the huge port in front of Marin Fando. Even with such a huge size of warship, there are enough to stop nearly 50 warships in this port. At this time, Ace has come to life, but because of Weibel's punch, there is still a faint pain in his chest. Beside Ace, In carefully helped him to the bow of the warship, and they all looked towards the Navy headquarters. Directly in front of them, a huge military fortress stood in the center of the island. On the wall of the fortress, two magnificent characters of Navy were written. Ace looked at it for a while and couldn't help but be filled with emotion. He was executed here in his previous life. Father Whitebeard, little Ozzy and countless brothers lost their lives because of him. Will he forget this feeling? Will never. The time for me to leave the Navy is getting closer and closer. Ace thought to himself that he had already learned what he wanted in the Navy, and according to his original thinking, it was time to leave now. But Ace looked down at Ain, who was holding his arm beside him, and thought of the teacher Zephyr who worked hard for him, and Drake who didn't hesitate to stand in front of him when he saw that he was in danger. He had to sigh again. How could he just throw away the fetters around him? While thinking, the warship has slowly docked in the port, and the wooden escalator has also driven to the coast. After the warship stopped, Zephyr and a group of students came out of the cabin. A few days ago, in front of Ace's hospital bed, Zephyr led all the sailors on the warship and bowed deeply to Ace, not only to thank Ace for beheading Wable, but also for the misunderstanding of Ace. Apologize for his behavior. At the moment Wable came to hunt them down, everyone understood that Virgo was indeed a spy of the Don Quixote family. Unbeknownst to Ace, Zephyr has already planned to make him a big surprise. When Ace, Zephyr and others walked up the escalator, he suddenly found that there were already several familiar figures waiting for them on the shore. The first person is the current Admiral Sengoku. He is wearing a white suit with the unique epaulets of the Admiral on his cloak shoulders. The most special thing is that there is a white seagull with open wings parked on his head. But Ace didn't look at him. On the left of Sengoku, a man in a red suit with a pink rose on his chest was looking at Zephyr and the others with his hands in his trouser pockets. In suddenly found that Ace beside him suddenly trembled all over, and she could even feel a strong murderous aura from Ace. Red Dog. Ace followed Drake to the square in front of the fortress. At this moment, many navies have gathered in the square, ranging from major to major general, with various military ranks. Have you heard? Our Navy is going to appoint a new lieutenant general today? Aren't you talking nonsense? I haven't heard of it. Why are we here? I heard that this guy just graduated from the training base. I'll go. I will be a lieutenant general as soon as I graduate. This is unprecedented. Even 3 generals couldn't do it back then. The navies in the square were all whispering to each other, discussing this mysterious new star of the Navy. Ace held his hat and walked into the crowd, listening to the Marines discussing themselves, boasting himself to the sky. His face flushed a little, and he said embarrassedly, "How can he be so good? Luck." Originally, Ace was just being humble, but from the ears of the surrounding Navy, it was not the case. It was obvious that this kid was jealous. And seeing that Ace is only 11 or 12 years old, and his outlook on life is being perfected, he can't be swayed by jealousy. This kid needs them to educate him well. The surrounding Navy immediately looked at him, and taught earnestly, "Recruit. You have to understand a truth, you must be modest enough when dealing with people who are stronger than you, and don't be blinded by jealousy." Well said. If you continue like this, you will never get stronger. Look at the lieutenant general who was awarded the rank today. How could he get the rank of lieutenant general as soon as he graduated? He must be a hard-working, humble and studious person. Ace has already been blinded by what he heard. Could it be that the lieutenant general who was awarded the title today is not me? That's not right either. Can the rank of lieutenant general still get together? It seemed that they were afraid of irritating Ace. The group of Marines patted Ace on the shoulder again, and comforted him. Don't be discouraged, as long as you can correct your mistakes from now on, you will have the opportunity to become a general in the future. Okay, stand still. Before Ace could speak, a senior official of the world government stood on the flag-raising platform in the center of the square, holding a stack of materials in his hand and giving an order. To be honest, the discipline of the Navy is quite strong. No matter what the military rank is, they immediately formed a neat team. "Hello, everyone, I think you already know what will happen today," the government official said with a smile. "Only the conferment ceremony of Vice Admiral and above will be presided over by our world government. So congratulations, everyone, today, our Navy will have another powerful lieutenant general. And what makes me even more happy is that this lieutenant general is really young, only 11 years old. It can be said that he has unlimited potential, ha ha ha." This sentence shocked all the Navy. What's the situation? Only 11 years old? This really belongs to children. But this is the world of One Piece after all, strength determines everything. So after sighing, They admired the child who was about to become a lieutenant general even more. What a genius he was at this time. Who is it? After the shock, some sea soldiers couldn't help but look around for this person. Holding the manuscript, the official said with a hint of exclamation, "Lieutenant General Ace, please come to the flag-raising platform." Ace touched his nose, passed through the gap of the crowd with a strange expression, and walked towards the flag-raising platform. What the hell? The sailors around who had just taught Ace a lesson were so shocked. What's going on? Could it be this child? Just now you criticized him for being only jealous, and asked him to work harder. Maybe he can become a general in the future. The co-authors now have the military rank they must look up to. What is the concept of lieutenant general? You must know that in the huge organization of the Navy, the number of lieutenant generals has never exceeded 20. Those sea soldiers couldn't help swallowing a few mouthfuls of saliva, and their faces turned red as if they were about to bleed. It's all embarrassing. Okay. Ace walked slowly towards the flag-raising platform. To be honest, he really didn't want to and wouldn't stay in the Navy any longer, but he accidentally achieved the achievement of lieutenant general. The mood is very complicated, but why is it a little cool? Ace stepped up to the flag-raising platform and came to the side of the government official. The official said with a smile, "In the past year, Lieutenant General Ace first killed Austin, the beheader, with a bounty of 100 million, and then wiped out the North Sea Underground Organization, playing cards, and just a few days ago gave the big pirate Edward Wabel a fatal blow with a bounty of over 400 million. After hearing about Ace's military exploits, there was a commotion in the audience. Originally they thought that Ace's appointment might have something to do with it, but they even killed 400 million pirates. What is the rank of a lieutenant general? With strength and combat achievements, the position of lieutenant general is what he deserves." Thinking of this, the eyes of the sailors in the audience looking at Ace changed again. Where is the limit of this child's future? General? Marshal? Commander-in-Chief? The Marines in the audience, whether they were majors or major generals, couldn't help applauding Ace at this moment. "Okay, be quiet." The official smiled and calmed down the audience, and then stretched out his hand to move back. Immediately, a guard of honor came up from the stage, holding a tray in both hands, and walked to the two of them with a positive step. Ace looked into the tray, and saw a cloak of justice dotted with the rank of lieutenant general neatly folded and placed in the tray. "Try it." The official raised his right hand, signaling Ace to put on the cloak. Ace wasn't too polite. To be honest, he also thought the cloak was pretty cool, so he took out the cloak directly, shook it in front of him, then pinched the two corners of the cloak with both hands, and put it on his body with a flick of his hand. The pure white cloak trembled slightly in the sea breeze, and two cursive characters of justice were embellished on the back of the cloak. I have to say that Ace really has a bit of domineering momentum at the moment. Under the arena, the students at the training base were all looking up. "Lieutenant General. When will we be promoted to Lieutenant General?" There were envious expressions on their faces, but none of them felt jealous of Ace. They were all happy for Ace from the bottom of their hearts, and Ain was the happiest among them. "My man is really amazing." Ian didn't realize what he said until he finished speaking. He looked around nervously, and was relieved when no one heard him, but his cheeks still turned red. "What? My man." Ain repeated in a low voice, glanced at Ace carefully, and then covered his face with his hands. "Oh, I'm so ashamed." Before the conferring ceremony ended, the government officials smiled and handed Ace a samurai sword, saying, "This good sword, Cold Moon, is your promotion reward. I hope you can use this sword to destroy more pirates." Ace's eyes lit up, and he took the knife immediately, but he said in his heart, "I'm afraid I will disappoint you." I counted. "I guess this knife won't live until tomorrow." The supreme sharp knife, that was snatched from the poker auction before, because it can't be swallowed now, and Ace is afraid of being confiscated, so he has been placed in the space of the different fire system. But this good and fast knife came at the right time. As long as Ace swallowed this knife, his physical strength would immediately reach the peak Major General. Speaking of which, although my physical strength is only at the Major General level, but I already have the rank of Lieutenant General, it seems that my strength needs to be improved quickly. Thinking of this, Ace felt a little itchy in his heart, wishing that the system would swallow Lang Yu immediately, but now that there are so many people, it's really hard to do it. "Okay, Ace, you are already an official Lieutenant General of the Navy headquarters, and today's awarding ceremony is over." The official smiled and patted Ace on the shoulder, and was about to turn around and leave, when suddenly a stern voice pierced through the air. The sound suddenly sounded. "Call out." A mass of crimson magma fell from the sky and suddenly fell onto the square. The roiling heat wave made several sailors who couldn't dodge scald and screamed. Goo. The magma center kept churning, and then slowly gathered together, gradually forming a figure in a red suit. Red. Red Inu-sama. When the Marines saw the appearance of the person coming, they all saluted him nervously. Akainu walked out of the magma, but ignored the sailors at all, casually shook the cloak behind him, and cast his cold eyes on Ace on the flag-raising platform. Are you Roger's son? The scene suddenly fell into a strange silence, and Ace's face gradually darkened. At the same time, a medium-sized warship was heading in the direction of the Navy headquarters. The bow of the warship was a gray dog's head with a bone in its mouth. At this time, on the bow of the dog-headed ship, there was an old man wearing a dog-headed hood, holding a fishing rod in his hand and fishing. Judging by the smile on his face, he seems to be in a good mood. It's just the end of the fishing line, which is shaking constantly. Grandpa, I was wrong. Don't fish me. Ha ha ha. Where did you go wrong? Are you still a pirate this time? The old man on the bow was Garp. Seeing that Luffy had admitted his mistake, he immediately laughed and asked. I don't want to be a pirate anymore. Luffy's voice came from below. Garp's face brightened, but Luffy continued. I don't want to be an ordinary pirate. I want to be the king of pirates. Damn. Brat. Garp raised his beard in anger, and raised his hand to extend the fishing rod longer, which caused another round of Luffy's screams. Suddenly, the sea surface in front suddenly boiled, and then a sea king with a dinosaur head jumped out from under the sea surface, opened its mouth full of sharp teeth, and swallowed Luffy in one gulp. Then it crashed into the deck of the warship with a bang. When Garp saw this scene, he was so shocked that the boss stared, and even a stream of snot flowed down his nose. He was just going to scare his grandson, but he didn't plan to feed Luffy to the fish. Not daring to hesitate any longer, Garp threw the fishing rod and rushed to the head of the Neptune, punching him. Spit it out for me. Hiccup. The Sea Kings fainted, but they hiccuped, making Garp's eyelids twitch in fright. Come and help. Garp yelled loudly at the sailors on board, so no matter whether it was the navigator or the cook, they all rushed over in a panic, and the warship was immediately full of chaos. It took dozens of people more than 10 minutes to take Luffy out of the Sea King's stomach. All of a sudden, a group of tired and paralyzed sailors lay on the deck. Are you all right, Luffy? Seeing that Luffy was just clutching his straw hat with some grievances, Garp knew he was fine, so he was relieved. It's just that he almost fed his grandson to the fish. Now he feels a little aggrieved, so he can only coax. I'll give you all the tenderest meat on this Neptune's stomach. Huh? Really? As soon as Luffy heard about the food, he forgot all his grievances and drool all over the floor. Garp was relieved to see that the fooling had passed, and ordered the chefs to deal with the Neptunes first and prepare dinner. Then, Garp picked up Luffy, jumped back onto the bow of the ship, put Luffy aside and sat down, smoothed out a few strands of messy hair on Luffy's head, then held his little hand and said, You must really hate a terrible grandpa like me. Luffy's 2 little feet were hanging outside the bow of the ship, dangling around. After hearing what Grandpa said, he looked up at Garp with some doubts. But, Luffy. Garp suddenly showed a kind look on Luffy's face that Luffy had never seen before. Forcing you and Ace to undergo such a difficult training, let you become sailors. It's because I don't want you take the wrong path. This is my wish. Garp rubbed Luffy's head. Grandpa. Luffy murmured. Ha ha ha. Okay, let's not talk. Do you know why I brought you here? Garp laughed loudly, put the melancholy color behind him, and said with some pride, That's because of that boy Ace. I am going to be a lieutenant general today. Ha ha ha, as expected of my grandson. Really? Luffy suddenly became excited when he heard Garp's words. My brother is really amazing. I have to work harder. After all, I am the man who wants to become the One Piece. Boom. Garp hammered Luffy's head again angrily, and a fist-sized meat bun suddenly bulged. It hurts. Luffy covered his head with tears in his eyes, but he couldn't stop being excited. He hadn't seen Ace for more than a year. Looking at the outline of the main fortress in the distance, he felt more and more excited. Happy. At this moment in the Navy Square, after the eerie silence, it was completely crazy, and all the sailors cast unbelievable glances at Ace. How can it be? The new Lieutenant General of the Navy is actually the son of the Pirate King Gold D. Roger. Impossible. Countless sailors roared in their hearts. But would Akainu, the Admiral of the Navy, lie? The sea soldiers seemed to be at war between heaven and man, and they didn't know whether to believe Akainu's words, but in the end they could only stare at Ace to see how he would answer. Akainu. Do you know what you were talking about? The face of the government official sank. He and Akainu are not in the same system at all, so they are not afraid of him at all. The two of you are the guarantors. Akainu ignored him at all, but still stared at Ace on the flag-raising platform with a cold expression. What? Don't you even dare to admit your own father? Are you just a coward? Ace suddenly laughed, and he sneered and said, Red Dog, you are still that unscrupulous scum. Hearing Ace's words, the sailors in the square jumped up in shock. How dare this kid talk to Admiral Akainu like this? Is he dead? Even if you are a lieutenant general, Akainu is a real general. If I want to kill you, one hand is enough. Akainu could no longer keep calm, and said with a ferocious expression. You wanna die? At this time, although Ace did not admit it, no matter how stupid the government officials were, they already understood Ace's identity. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel a toothache. The vice admiral appointed by the government is actually the son of One Piece? Saying it would make countless people laugh their heads off, so when he saw that Akainu was about to make a move, he silently walked down from the side of the flag-raising platform, acquiescing to Akainu's actions. The scandal of the government must be buried here today. From the moment Akainu appeared, Ace knew that there was no way to be good today. He understood the nature of Akainu. He was a guy who would rather kill than let go, so he was not prepared to argue at all. Now that you've been exposed and you can't escape, let's fight. Ace looked at the Red Dog in the audience, raised his eyebrows, and his body suddenly had a monstrous fighting spirit. Although he had a deeper city in this life, he was still the indomitable Fire Fist Ace in his bones. Flipping his right hand, Lang Yu was directly taken in by the alien fire system. The system seemed to feel the crisis of Ace at the moment, so he didn't even need to speak, and directly absorbed and devoured this good and fast knife. In the next second, a tidal wave of power poured into Ace's body. This time the system was not stingy, and most of the energy was transmitted into Ace's body, directly strengthening Ace's physical strength to the highest peak that can be achieved. The remaining mysterious energy has raised the Spirit Fire Pure Body Art to the 4th level. Attributes. Constitution, Major General, 10 Spiritual Fire Essence Body Art, the 4th stage. Body Energy. 0-200 Different Fire, Qinglian Earth Heart Fire. The thought was withdrawn from the attribute bar, and Ace immediately turned his hand and took out the supreme sharp knife, Yi, from the different fire space. The several meter-long blade gleamed with pitch-black light. The chill caused the sailors in the audience to involuntarily widen their eyes. The supreme sharp knife. The sea soldier who knows the goods couldn't help but shout it out. What? Is it the Emperor of the Sword with only 12 handles in the world? This Ace has such a treasure. And where did he take out this knife just now? Has anyone of you seen it clearly? The sailors were too surprised today, and some slow response worldviews are probably about to collapse. In the square, seeing Ace in crisis, Ain was about to rush to help, but was held back by Drake. Ian, you can't go, you will die, Drake said seriously. I'm not afraid, I'm going to help my brother. Ain struggled to break free, but found that Drake was more determined than ever. You can only drag Ace back now. What we have to do now is to find Teacher Zephyr and Marshal Warring States quickly, Drake said at the fastest speed. Only they can help Ace now. To be honest, Ace's identity really shocked the two of them, but after just a moment, they stood on Ace's side without hesitation. This is true friendship. You go to the teacher, I'll go to the marshal. After finishing speaking, Derek rushed out of the square, even using the shave to get faster. And Ain turned his head to look at Ace, and finally gritted his teeth and disappeared in place, thinking silently, brother, you must be fine. Bark. Chuck. Before the flag-raising platform, drops of magma were already dripping on Akainu's right arm, and the boiling magma fell on the ground, scalding the hard stone square with large and small pits. The surrounding sailors couldn't stand the high temperature and staggered back a distance of more than 10 meters. Are you ready? Akainu asked with a gloomy face. He had been watching Ace make various preparations, not because he was really kind, but because he felt disdain for Ace from the bottom of his heart. To beat Ace, who had been preparing for a long time, with one punch, to make him collapse from mental to physical, is the true purpose of Akainu. Ha ha ha. Ace burst out laughing suddenly, then raised his hand, and threw out the Navy Justice cloak he had just put on, and the white cloak fluttered in the air. Suddenly, a ray of sparks popped out from Ace's fingertips and fell onto the cloak. Call. The word, justice, was suddenly enveloped in flames, and the entire cloak instantly burned to ashes. Ace understands that starting today, no matter whether he survives this crisis or not, he will never be a sea soldier again. No matter whether it is the government or the high-level navy, they will not allow the existence of a son of the devil like him in the navy. Bring it on. Ace stared at Akainu closely, with a smile on the corner of his mouth, holding a knife in both hands, full of fighting spirit. He is not a person who hesitates. Now that he has made a decision, from this moment on, he has completely bid farewell to his navy status. Humph. Akainu's face sank. Seeing that Ace had burned the navy's cloak just like that, he finally couldn't help but take the lead. Little bastard, I want you to regret being born in this world. Boom. With the wave of Akainu's fist, his right arm suddenly turned into a huge lava fist, and with a terrifying heat, it bombarded Ace on the flag-raising platform. Before the fist arrived, the splashing magma set off a wave of heat, directly destroying the flag-raising platform at Ace's feet. Facing the blow from Akainu, Ace took a deep breath. His eyes became dignified, but he didn't mean to back down in the slightest. Spiritual Fire Essence Body Art, Explode. The body art, which has reached the 4th level, fully increased Ace's body strength by 5 times. The muscles of his body seemed to swell in an instant, and he seemed to be full of explosive power. Qinglian's Heartfire also burst out from Ace's body, and instantly entangled on the blade of Yi. The Supreme Sword is indeed one of the strongest weapons in the pirate world, shrouded in such terrifying flames. There was no sign of melting at all. Qinglian Folding Flame /80 layers. Even if Akainu just hit him casually, Ace didn't mean to test it at all. Facing an enemy who is nearly 3 stages higher than him, if he still wants to keep his hand, then he is courting death. The Yi in Ace's hand slashed down suddenly, and a huge dark blue flame blade, with a terrifying temperature, seemed to distort the air, and rushed straight to the magma fist blasted by Akainu. Akainu felt a little surprised when he saw the flames rushing out of Ace's body, but immediately laughed out of disdain. What about flames? It's just ordinary fire, but I can burn magma even with fire. I have a complete relationship with this ability. Still muttering in his heart, his magma fist had already collided with Ace's flaming sword energy. From Akainu's point of view, that sword energy would be directly defeated in the next moment. And the surrounding sailors also felt that Ace would be directly killed by this terrible punch. Boom. There was a chirp, and in the next second, the magma fist blasted by the Red Dog fell into the downwind, and the cyan sword energy suddenly sank into it. Before disappearing, it directly cut the fist in half. The magma passed by both sides of Ace, and with a bang, 2 large pits with a diameter of 10 meters were blasted on the square behind him. Looking at Ace, who was still maintaining his knife-wielding posture, Akainu's smile gradually froze on his face. Gudong. I don't know which sailor on the square swallowed first, and the sound of swallowing followed one after another. I read it right just now, that Ace. Ace split the magma of General Akainu? No one answered him, because everyone saw it. How strong is Ace really? That was a blow from the general. Ace reached out and wiped the blade, and the flame returned to his body. Then he stretched out his right hand, and a blue flame lotus flower condensed in the palm of his hand. The corner of Ace's mouth slanted up, his index finger was raised up, and the lotus nimbly jumped to his fingertips, spinning slowly. He smiled at Akainu. You may have misunderstood my flame. After all, your magma is only about 1200 degrees at most. Sorry, my flame has a minimum temperature of 1600 degrees. Qinglian Earth's Heartfire can directly burn out the iron cage, but isn't the temperature at least over 1500 degrees? Humph. Akainu gritted his teeth and snorted coldly with a gloomy face. Ace was thinking quickly in his heart. In that blow just now, although Ace affirmed that the temperature of the different fire is much higher than that of the magma, his basic strength is far from that of Akainu, and he cannot fully exert this kind of power. Advantage. Once Akainu gets rid of his contempt for Ace, the following battle will probably be more difficult. Boy. Don't think that with a special fruit ability, you can be arrogant. Let me show you the real gap between yourself and the general today. Watch me kill you with one move, fire breathing. Boom. Akainu snorted coldly, and this time he used a real move. The lava fist he struck out was 10 times the size of the previous one. Before he rushed in front of Ace, such a huge size produced a strong sense of oppression. Ace looked like a tiny ant in front of his fist, and he couldn't help but look heavy. Brush. But of course he couldn't just sit and wait like this. In an instant, the Yi in his hand slashed 3 huge flames of sword energy in front of him. The high temperature on the blade was still not comparable to magma, and it easily cut into the fist middle. But the size of the fist this time is too huge. The sword energy has only penetrated into 1/3 of the fist, and it has been exhausted, and the hot magma still bombards Ace head-on with an unrivaled momentum. At this time, Ace had no time to hide from the attack range of the lava fist. Facing the oncoming magma, Ace immediately mobilized all his defensive abilities. Armed color, harden. A layer of dark domineering suddenly condensed. With a movement in my heart, a thin layer of strange fire covered the domineering exterior. As soon as he finished all this, the lava fist hit Ace's yi in front of him. At this moment, Ace suddenly felt a terrifying force coming from the blade, even though Ace already had 5 times the physical strength, and even the strength could rival the master of the lieutenant general. At this moment, he was completely unable to resist. His arms creaked. The clothes on his body were shaken into strips of cloth by a huge force, and then Ace was directly blasted out. The magma that followed crashed to the ground, bringing Ace's body onto the square, and the terrifying force formed a deep pit with a radius of nearly 50 meters on the square. The gurgling magma continued to flow in the pit, transpiring soaring white steam. Thump thump. Countless sailors in the square had already fallen to the ground, and feeling the blazing heat coming towards them, they couldn't help showing expressions of shock. General Akainu is really strong. This time this kid should die. Boom. 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 At this moment, Akainu didn't stop at all, and kept bombarding huge magma fists into the deep pit. Many sailors had already shown their unbearable looks. Under such attacks, Ace didn't even have a chance to leave a whole body. Whoosh whoosh. Just when they thought Ace was dead, several streams of flaming sword energy suddenly rushed out from the bottom of the pit, and after splitting a few small magma fists, Ace rushed out from the bottom of the pit stepping on the moon steps. Come up. The sailors were stunned. Is this Ace with such a strong vitality? Ace looked a little embarrassed at the moment. The clothes on his upper body had become strips of cloth. There were occasional small scorched marks on his skin, and blood was constantly flowing out from the corner of his mouth. The sailors in the square looked at Ace in shock. They couldn't imagine how Ace survived such a powerful force, and they couldn't help admiring Ace. At only 11 years old, can he take 2 moves from the general without dying? This is definitely a child with a bright future. Feeling a broken rib in his body, Ace's face was extremely pale, and he could only give a wry smile. If it wasn't for the domineering and strange fire covering his body, Ace would have died just now. Ha, very good. I admit that you have made me angry. Akainu's face is very ugly now. In his heart, a small lieutenant general can be solved with 1 punch. As a result, after 2 moves, Ice is still alive and kicking, which makes him very embarrassing. This is equivalent to being slapped in the face twice. If you let him know that Ace's current physical strength is actually only at the level of a major general, I don't know if Akainu will directly commit suicide in embarrassment. Goo. This time, Akainu's body exuded an unprecedented aura, and thicker magma appeared between his arms. Obviously, he was ready to make a big move. Run. Get out of the square. The sailor who had seen the red dog shot immediately shouted out in horror, and turned around and fled to the outside of the square. Then all the navy in the square changed their faces and fled in a panic. Akainu is a guy who never cares about his subordinates. Dog nip Red Lotus. Regardless of the sailors at all, the red dog roared out in a low voice with a cold face, and the billowing magma erupted, and it condensed directly into a 10-meter-high lava dog. The ferocious dog, covered in lava, seemed to have turned into a living creature, exuding a monstrous flame that far surpassed the previous moves. After a loud roar, the vicious dog opened its mouth full of magma-sharp teeth, kicked its limbs wildly, and broke through to Ace's side in an instant at a terrifying speed. There was no time to react. Ace could only force his domineering to resist, and was swallowed by the vicious dog. The sharp teeth pierced Ace's body, and even injured his internal organs. In an instant, seriously injured, Ace has been cornered. Is this the strength of a general? The severe pain from his body did not make Ace lose consciousness, and his strong willpower allowed him to maintain his ability to think. While resisting the lava around him with domineering and strange fire, Ace gradually narrowed his eyes, took yi back into the space of different fire, and muttered, "It seems that even if I can't control it now, I have to use that trick. It's gone." Call. Cyan and purple flames suddenly appeared on Ace's hands, and then he gritted his teeth, carrying the 2 flames of different colors in both hands, and slowly moved towards the middle. It is impossible for different flames to be compatible with other flames, otherwise, the moment they touch each other, the terrifying high temperature will burst out several times the original in an instant. For a normal person to touch the strange fire with other flames, it is tantamount to courting death, and the high temperature that erupts will instantly burn it to ashes. During the battle, Xiao Yan had the help of Fen Zhu when he used this move, but Ace's confidence came from the system. But even with the help of the system, it was very difficult for Ace to control them. His hands were trembling, and the cyan flame and the purple flame slowly touched together. Boom. The moment the two flames came into contact, there was a muffled thunderous sound, and the turbulence between the two seemed to be uncontrollable. Even Ace's palm was protected by domineering, and it was blown to blood. But Ace still gritted his teeth, and mobilized the strength of his whole body to shrink the distance between his hands. When compressed to an extreme, Qinglian's heartfire suddenly erupted, as if to swallow the purple fire, and a terrifying power was brewing in Ace's palm. Ace didn't give up. His eyes were still fixed on the purple flames in his palm, while his spirit was extremely concentrated. Suddenly the Zon heavy ruler in the system trembled slightly, and a mysterious power was transmitted to Ace's palm between. With the injection of this kind of energy, the two-color flame group that had already started to go berserk gradually calmed down. Under Ace's watchful eyes, a palm-sized purple rosette slowly formed. It's finally done. Buddha's Wrath Fire Lotus. At the moment when the lotus seed was formed, Ace finally showed a look of joy on his face. Carefully holding this two-color lotus, Ace already felt that he was about to be unable to stop the raging magma around him, so he stopped hesitating, and immediately kicked Qinglian Lanzhao towards the same part in front of him. The three-sword chi fell to one position at the same time, and finally managed to cut a small slit in the lava dog's neck. After seeing Akainu's figure from the gap, Ace didn't dare to waste any more time. Immediately through this gap, he slammed the purple lotus seed in his hand towards the red dog standing in the distance. Although the blue and purple flame rosette looked beautiful, it didn't emit any terrible power at all, so Akainu just frowned after seeing such a thing thrown by Ace. When he saw that Ace did not escape from the vicious dog, but was devoured again, Akainu showed a cruel smile on his face. In his eyes, Ace could no longer make any waves. As for the lotus flower floating slowly, Chiquan didn't take it seriously at all. The attack from a guy who just entered the rank of lieutenant general probably couldn't even pierce his own skin. But just when the lotus rushed into the 5-meter range of the red dog, the originally calm rosette suddenly became violent, and it swelled suddenly almost instantly. Feeling the terrifying power coming from inside, Akainu's face finally changed drastically, but he was just about to run away. An earth-shattering explosion exploded in the square. Boom. Brilliant purple flames suddenly swept across most of the square, and the turbulent fire waves spread out, causing the temperature of the entire space to rise several levels in an instant. The sailors who ran out of the square ahead of time were overturned by the heat wave, and the few strong men who were still conscious turned their heads dully to look at the center of the explosion. If they hadn't run away in time just now, how many of them could have survived such an explosion? Is this the destructive power of the general level? It's too terrifying. Some people didn't know that it was actually an attack from Ace because they kept running away. Gudong. Someone swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said with a complicated expression, This seems to be made by that Ace. What? The flames gradually dissipated, but the original square had disappeared, replaced by a huge black pit tens of meters deep. And Akainu, who was the closest to the explosion point just now, was undoubtedly hit the hardest. In that turbulent fire wave, all the clothes on Akainu's body were burned away, and several terrifying scars were clearly visible, and blood continued to seep out of the wound. The most tragic thing was that, while the magma was flowing, one of his right ears could not be condensed again. At this time, Ace was lying on the edge of the deep pit, unable to move at all. He underestimated the power of the Buddha's Fury Lotus. If it wasn't for the red dog's magma that wrapped his whole body, it would have blocked him for a while. Power. Maybe Ace has been directly burned to death by his own flame at this moment. Not to mention that Ace was seriously injured in the explosion. Even Ace in his heyday could not survive the explosion center. But Akainu was at the center of the explosion and was still alive? Ace could only give a wry smile, lamenting that he is worthy of the strength of a general. Then, is that General Akainu? But the sailors outside the square didn't think so at all. They looked at Akainu, who had lost one ear and was in a state of disbelief, almost speechless. Ace actually injured Akainu and even ruined one of his ears. It is no longer possible to describe Akainu's anger in words. Rolling magma continued to flow down from his body, filling most of the deep pit in a short while. Originally, I thought that the opponent's attack would not even scratch my own skin, but now that he is covered in scars, he looks even more miserable than Ace. How could he swallow such a shame? Bastard. Don't think about dying so easily. I will use magma to melt your body inch by inch. A monstrous killing intent suddenly exudes from Akainu's body, coupled with his terrifying face with only one ear left at the moment. It looks even more terrifying. As soon as the words fell, a huge magma fire column suddenly erupted between Akainu's legs, and then rushed towards Ace under the impetus of it. Seeing the magma erupting from his palm, the domineering color of this armed color is faintly revealed. The next attack is definitely the strongest attack that Akainu can unleash in a state of anger. It seemed that Ace, who was unable to move this time, could only stay quietly and wait for death. Seeing Akainu's blood-covered mess, Ace suddenly laughed. As a major general, he actually pushed Akainu to this point, so he should be satisfied. It's just that I still have some regrets. Luffy, Sabo, Daddy, Ian, I don't seem to be able to accompany you anymore. But just when Akainu raised his fists high and was about to rush to Ace, there was a loud shout full of anger outside the square. Sakazuki, how dare you touch my grandson? The moment the sound first appeared, it was still outside the square, but the next moment it was already approaching the center of the square. Akainu felt the killing intent approaching rapidly from his side, and only had time to barely turn around, and saw a huge fist suddenly enlarged in front of his eyes. Boom. With a loud noise, the fist came into close contact with Akainu's head in an instant. Originally, the ability users of the natural department should be immune to physical attacks. But this punch was not affected at all, and the huge force from it hit Akainu's face instantly distorted and deformed. Whoosh. The red dog was blasted out at a faster speed than when it came, and with a loud noise, another human-shaped pothole was left on the side of the deep pit. Ace. The figure that suddenly appeared was Garp, and Luffy, who was under his arm, saw Ace lying on the ground with his eyes closed, unable to move, and immediately rushed up crying and screaming. Ace, don't die. Luffy shook Ace's body, tears gushed out like a tide. Sabo is gone too, you can't die. Thump. Ace opened his eyes, endured the pain in his body, punched Luffy on the head, and said weakly, ahem, stop shaking, I'm not dead yet. Ace, as long as you're fine. Luffy sobbed, seeing that Ace was fine. He immediately put him on the ground gently, a little nervous, for fear of hurting Ace. Haha. I said I won't die. Luffy, you have to believe me. Hiss. Ace comforted Luffy with a smile, but there was another pain in his abdomen, which made him sweat profusely from the pain. Clack clack. The gravel beside the deep pit suddenly fell to the ground, and the red dog crawled out of the stone pit with a gloomy face, and said grimly. Carp. Do you know what you're doing? That kid is Roger's son. I only saw that you were going to hit my grandson. Garp saw that Ace was seriously injured, and his heart had already risen to the sky, and he didn't want to talk nonsense with Akainu at all. With a raised eyebrow, he exuded a powerful aura that Ace had never seen before, and directly moved towards Ace again. Red Dog rushed over. Boom. Boom. Akainu couldn't imagine that Garp didn't care about his face at all, and he came up with a violent bombardment of punches and kicks. In a hurry, Akainu soon felt overwhelmed. He was a little horrified to find that Garp's strength was not just general level. Strength beyond the general level. What level is that? Fists like raindrops fell on Akainu's body, splashing dense magma, which splattered on the ground. The sailors on one side have already seen it. What happened today? First, Admiral Akainu wanted to deal with Lieutenant General Ace, but was destroyed by Lieutenant General Ace. Then Lord Garp, the hero of the Navy, suddenly appeared again, and beat Lieutenant Admiral Akainu. Wrong. Co-author, it seems that the most unlucky person today is General Akainu. Boom boom boom. Garp didn't hold back at all, and Akainu was beaten all over his body in a moment, which was extremely miserable. At this time, the people Ain and Drake called to help finally arrived. After Zephyr and Sengoku rushed to the edge of the square, they were taken aback suddenly when they saw the scene on the square, and their figures stopped abruptly. Isn't that Carp? Didn't he come to rescue Ace? Judging from the situation, this time, Akainu should be rescued first. The one with the ugliest face was the one in Warring States. He was on the verge of crying. He had only been the marshal for a year. The naval headquarters is about to be demolished. How will he explain to the higher authorities? Garp, stop it. Watching Garp and Akainu demolish another half of the square, Sengoku became a little anxious. Boom. Boom. Garp didn't seem to hear it, and still punched Akainu persistently. Did you hear me? I command you to stop. Boom. Boom. The rhythm was different, but Garp still didn't stop. This time Sengoku understands. If he doesn't make a move, maybe Garp will really beat Akainu to death just like that. Warring States stepped on the ground with both feet on the ground, and his body suddenly appeared in front of Garp, and the two current strongest fighters in the Navy just punched each other head on. Boom. Hum. Where the two fists collided, a wave of air suddenly rose up, and a gust of wind blew up in the square, causing the sailors to stagger again. At this moment, Garp finally stopped, but Akainu was already bruised and swollen, and he was out of shape. Warring States. What are you doing? I haven't troubled you yet. How dare you stop me? Garp's face was very ugly, and he still seemed unrelieved. Of course Sengoku knew why Garp was angry, but he was the admiral of the Navy after all, so he couldn't just let Garp go on messing around like this. Sengoku said sincerely, Garp, you are still a member of the Navy after all. But as soon as he was halfway through, he was interrupted by Garp bluntly. Is my grandson not a member of the Navy? You just let Sakazuki do this to Ace? If I come a step late today. Huh. When Garp said this, his face showed a murderous look again, and he was about to rush towards Akainu again. Sengoku originally wanted to say that Ace was actually different, he was the son of Roger, the naval enemy, but seeing Garp's gloomy face, he swallowed the words again. He had no choice but to change his words and said, Garp, why don't you send Ace to the hospital? This sentence really worked. Garp stopped abruptly, but after a pause, he suddenly kicked up, kicking the red dog who was too late to react, and then it seemed to disappear. Taking a breath, he dodged to Ace's side. Lifting Luffy with one hand and gently hugging Ace with the other, Garp didn't even turn his head, just left a sentence. Sengoku, I will resign as the Lieutenant General of the headquarters from today. His tone was extremely firm, and as soon as he finished speaking, he headed towards the base hospital without hesitation. The face of the Warring States period couldn't help but change, this time it's in big trouble. Garp is not just a simple lieutenant general, he is also a hero of the Navy and a symbol of spirit. It can be said that if Garp resigns, it will be a huge blow to the reputation of the entire Navy. HMPH. I'm old too, it's time to retire. Misfortunes never come singly. At this time Zephyr also glanced at this side, said something in a flat tone, and then led Ain and Drake to chase Garp ahead. This time, the Warring States could only smile wryly. Are the two old comrades in arms who have made great achievements for the Navy already disappointed in the Navy? Two old bastards, you can leave if you want. At this time, seeing Garp had gone far, Akainu dared to say coldly. Shut up. Zon Guo raised his eyebrows, and suddenly exuded a menacing aura, and went straight towards Akakenu, causing his complexion to change drastically. Akainu didn't dare to stay any longer, and walked away directly, leaving a resentful sentence. You wait for me, that Ace can't escape so easily. Sengoku's face became more and more gloomy. He knew that this red dog had connections with the 5 elders of the government. As long as he reported Ace's identity to the world government, senior government officials would never tolerate Roger's bloodline living in this world. Hey, Warring States sighed, and then disappeared in place. In the final analysis, he was just a pawn played by the government. He could only do his job well and try to save the majority of civilians from bad luck. He can't control Ace's affairs. After being treated by the base doctor, Ace was already lying in an intensive care unit. It has to be said that people in this world have abnormal physiques, not to mention Ace, whose physical strength has reached the peak of a major general. In just a short while, Ace felt much better. The broken ribs in his chest had begun to itch slightly, and they had obviously begun to heal again. It's just that there is a circle of people around Ace's hospital bed now, Garp, Zephyr, Ian, Drake and even Luffy hanging there with his hands on the side of the bed. This made Ace a little helpless, but more moved. Before I knew it, I was an orphan who lost my parents, so many people cared about me. Brother Ace, are you feeling better? It was Ian who spoke first, with a concerned expression on her face, and even a trace of self-blame hidden deep in her expression. Haha, I'm fine. Ace swung his fist vigorously, but this action involved the wound on his body, causing a trace of cold sweat to ooze from his forehead, but Ace's expression remained relaxed. Stinky boy, why are you being so brave? Garp punched Ace on the head, and said angrily, 2 ribs are broken, so it's no wonder they recovered so quickly. Hey! Why are you beating my apprentice? Zephyr was unhappy, rolled up his sleeves and pushed Garp. Hee, you old boy. It's none of your business for me to teach my grandson a lesson. Garp frowned, and pushed Zephyr backhand. Okay you still hit me. Do you remember the first time you went to the battlefield and was seriously injured, Who carried you back? Zephyr took a step forward and grabbed Garp's beard. It hurts, it hurts. It's like I never blocked the knife for you. Garp didn't show weakness, and grabbed Zephy's purple hair. The two strong men of the Navy just cursed and pulled each other like this. Who was messing around in the hospital? A doctor who looked like the director of the hospital suddenly opened the door and rushed in. Seeing two old boys who were not doing their job, he immediately shouted, "You two! There are so many patients in the hospital. What if you disturb the rest of the patients? Get out of here." When Zephyr and Garp heard this, they instantly became honest. At the same time, they bowed 90 degrees to the doctor and said in unison, "I'm sorry." Ace and the others were speechless for a while, so proficient, it seems that this is not the first time this has happened. The director snorted coldly, turned his head and walked out of the ward. And Zephyr and Garp also walked out obediently, but seeing the way they grabbed each other's arms, it is estimated that there will be a battle when they go out. Ahem. How embarrassing, Drake said with a strange face. It was the first time he saw the teacher behave like this, and he wondered if he would be silenced later. But Ace and Luffy are much calmer, because they are used to it. Ain only had Ace in his eyes, so he didn't pay much attention to Zephyr and Garp's affairs. After thinking for a while, Ain suddenly said with a sad expression, "Ace, are you leaving?" Girls are always much more sensitive. From the moment Ace and Chinu tore their faces apart, Ain already understood that Ace could no longer stay in the Navy. Hearing what Ain said, Ace was silent for a while, then sighed and said, "You all know my identity, right? Although I don't want to admit it, I am indeed Roger's son." Sigh. When Drake heard this from Ace himself, he still gasped. He didn't expect his brother's background to be so terrible. However, Ace is the son of Roger and the grandson of Lord Garp. And many more. The relationship is a bit messy. Seeing Drake's expression, Ace couldn't help but rolled his eyes. He knew where Drake was thinking. Don't think about it, Garp is just my godfather. Ian's expression didn't change a bit, she said firmly. No matter what the identity of brother Ace is, it will always be mine. My. Ain's face blushed when he said this, as if he was embarrassed to say it, and finally he could only say, my dearest person. Haha, I understand. Ace reached out and rubbed Ainhai's blue hair, and then said, I know you don't care about my identity, but that guy Akainu will definitely report my identity to the world government, that at that time, they will definitely not mind killing me, the son of the devil. So I really can't stay in the Navy anymore, I have to leave as soon as possible. Speaking of this, Ace asked gently, Ian, Drake, are you willing to go with me? Ian's face showed a happy look at first, but then it was replaced by a firm determination. Brother, we can't go with you. Ace was a little surprised, but he knew that Ain must have his own ideas, so he continued to listen. We are still too weak to help my brother. If my brother leaves, there will definitely be soldiers chasing him. If we are also on the boat, we will definitely drag him down. He blamed himself for not being strong enough, so we have to continue to learn from teacher Zephyr, and when we finish our practice, we will definitely go to our brother. Speaking of which, Ian suddenly took out a white card from his bosom, carefully tore off a small piece, put it back into his bosom, and handed the bigger part to Ace. Brother, this is the life card I asked someone to make for you, and we can use this to find you in the future. Ain seemed to see the doubts on Ace's face, and stammered, I was the last time when I was taking care of my brother, I secretly left my nails to do it. Ace accepted the life card, and suddenly stepped forward and gently kissed Ain on the forehead. He understood that what Ain said was right. With their current strength, if they escaped from the Navy together, someone might die in the sea. Ian's little face turned red instantly, his head was buried deeply, and his mind went blank for an instant. Brother, just kissed me. Oh, shy. At this moment, Luffy, who had been hanging by the bed, suddenly spoke. Thump. In exchange for it was Ace's fist. Little kid, what do you know? Ace actually didn't know why he was impulsive just now, and his old face was slightly red at the moment, but on the surface he still wanted to maintain his majesty as a brother. There was a lump on Luffy's head in an instant. He didn't understand why even Ace could swing the iron fist of love now. He covered his head with his hands, and Luffy fell to the ground with a plop. Although there were tears in the corners of his eyes, Luffy still said, Ace, I want to go to sea with you. Thump. Ace knocked on Luffy again, and said, don't mess around, go back with Grandpa Garp. Of course Ace doesn't want Luffy to go with him, after all. Luffy is not ready to take risks, and he doesn't want to put Luffy in danger now. So he ruthlessly covered his head, and Luffy, a little aggrieved, turned his head to Ain and Drake and said, I still need you to do me a favor. help me prepare a ship, and I have enough supplies, let's go tonight. Ian had been immersed in the sweetness all the time, but after hearing Ace's words, he suddenly woke up, with reluctance in his eyes. Are you in such a hurry? N. Ace didn't say much, but the heavy expression on his face told them the answer. So, the two didn't ask any more questions, but immediately turned around and walked out of the ward. To Ace's surprise, Luffy went out with the two of them, and he didn't care, thinking that Luffy had gone out to find Garp, so he immediately closed his eyes and tried his best to run the Spirit Fire Essence art to speed up the recovery of his body speed. That night, a small sloop sailed slowly out of the port of the Navy headquarters in the darkness. Ace was lying on the deck of the sailboat with bandages on his body, but his heart was filled with excitement. The boat was already filled with food and water barrels. Finally, you can officially go to sea, haha, bang dong. The sound of a wooden barrel being overturned suddenly came from the cabin, and Ace's face suddenly froze. No way. Ace immediately jumped up and rushed into the cabin, only to see that the wooden barrel had fallen to the ground, and the lid of one of the wooden barrels had fallen to the side, but there was no water in it, only. Luffy. Why are you here? Ace grabbed Luffy by the collar, lifted him up, and said in disbelief, didn't I tell you to go find Grandpa Garp? I want to be with Ace. Luffy grabbed his straw hat tightly and covered his face, his shoulders kept shaking. Ace, you have been away for more than a year, except you. There is no one else to rely on. Luffy lifted his hat abruptly, tears all over his face, and wept bitterly. Boom. Ace suddenly knocked on the head of Luffy, but immediately hugged Luffy into his arms, and said with some distress, you are 8 years old, why are you still a crybaby? There was no blame in his tone, and even a bit of guilt. In his previous life, he spent his childhood with Luffy, and used his companionship to dispel the loneliness in each other's hearts. In this life, he wholeheartedly wanted to become stronger quickly and possess the strength to protect his relatives, but he had already neglected the younger brother who had always needed him. Let's go together, kindness. The next day, the Admiral's office at the top of the naval headquarters fortress. Click. The tabletop in front of Akainu suddenly turned into nitrous powder, his head was wrapped with a bandage, and one ear was wrapped in it. He gritted his teeth and asked. You said. That kid has already run away. Yes, it is. In front of Akainu, a brigadier general was sweating and said cautiously, this morning, when we went to the hospital to arrest him, he had already disappeared. Huh. Trash. Akazuki looked at the trembling brigadier in front of him, his face became more gloomy, get out of here. The brigadier general immediately turned around and rushed out of the room as if he had received an amnesty. Akainu sat on the chair, his expression flickering constantly. He touched the bandage wrapped around his ear, with a cruel look on his face. Taking a deep breath, adjusting his expression, Akainu took out the phone bug that could directly contact Wu Laoxing. Blue blue blue, click. The other person picked up the phone. Sakazuki, what's the matter with you? Didn't you agree to let you arrest that kid named Ace? He's already gone. To be honest, Akainu was a little embarrassed and a little angry, because he could say that he suffered a big loss from Ace, not only lost an ear, but was also beaten up by that old lunatic Garp. In his more than 40 years of career, he has never suffered such a big loss. The 5 old stars on the opposite side did not speak for a while, but at this moment, silence is better than sound. Akainu seemed to hear them scolding him as a waste in his heart. I applied for a reward on Ace. With his status, he is too much of a threat to us, Akainu said in a deep voice. Those former members of the Roger Pirates who are hiding all over the world, if they know that Roger still has such a son, then. Akainu didn't continue talking, he believed that Wu Laoxing on the opposite side must have understood what he meant. We approved it. Wu Laoxing's voice came from the phone bug, let's set a bounty of 500 million first. However, don't mention his life experience in the arrest warrant. Understand. Akainu nodded, knowing what the 5 old stars meant. They were afraid that the monsters of the Roger Pirates would gather together again because of Ace's background. Click. Beep, there was a busy tone, and the other party had already hung up. Akainu put away the phone bug, sneered, and immediately set off to prepare for Ace's reward. Because of the direct orders from the 5 old stars, Garp and others couldn't stop Akainu at all. After half a day, Ace's reward order had been printed and sent to the world. Garp resigned in anger, and sailed back to the East China Sea with his direct sailors, and Zephyr also chose not to serve as a naval instructor, but left the Navy headquarters with Ain and Drake, preparing to fight in the following days. Dedicated to teaching the two of them. On the light yellow wanted notice, Fallen Navy, Firefist Ace, offers a reward of 500 million. At the same time, with the release of the wanted warrant, Ace's name resounded throughout the sea for the first time. Dressrosa. Doflamingo held Ace's arrest warrant in his hand, and suddenly let out a cold laugh. Foofer furfer. This kid is really unlucky. Torable, let's add another fire. Add an additional condition under our private bounty. As long as anyone can kill this boy named Ace, not only can he receive the Navy's bounty, but he can also take away our 500 million bounty unconditionally. Yes. Torable responded respectfully, and stepped back. He understood that after this order was spread, Ace's total bounty of 500 million would definitely drive all bounty hunters into madness. This boy named Ace is going to be unlucky. In the new world, a pirate hastily handed a wanted warrant to Whitebeard. The crescent-shaped beard on Whitebeard's face kept shaking, and he said to Margot, the phoenix beside him, "Kulalala. There is another energetic young man in the sea." In the Devil's Triangle area of the Great Root, Moria looked at Ace's wanted warrant and suddenly became excited. This kid has been hiding in the Navy, and I can't do anything about him. This time he is also a wanted criminal in the Navy. What else? A bounty of 500 million. As long as I catch this kid and snatch his shadow, I can activate special zombie number 900. He. Somewhere along the Great Root, a small coffin-like boat was constantly advancing on the sea. Behind the small boat, a huge pirate ship was cut in half with a knife and was slowly sinking into the sea. And the eagle-eyed Mihawk on the boat was staring at the reward order, the black knife, Yi, in Ace's hand, and he was very excited. The supreme sharp knife, Yi, is in the hands of this kid named Ace, inside. Thinking of this, Mihawk shifted his gaze to Ace's face, the corners of his mouth slightly tilted up, and said, "It seems that I'm going to meet you." Ace, are we lost? Luffy was wearing a straw hat, standing on the bow of the boat, tilting his head to look at Ace. At this moment, the scene was a little awkward. Looking at the thick fog that had surrounded them, Ace's face darkened, and he didn't know what to say. In fact, after Mr. Zephyr knew that Ain was helping Ace prepare the ship, he had already asked Ain to give Ace a lot of permanent pointers, basically including the islands in the first half of the Great Route. But Ace still underestimated the difficulty of sailing, and accidentally rushed into a seemingly endless fog. Ahem, don't worry. Everything is under control. After hesitating for a while, Ace decided to maintain his brother's majesty first. Ace is really powerful. Luffy grinned, and immediately believed what Ace said. Ha 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 ha. Covering his embarrassment with a smile, Ace urged Luffy to go to exercise first. Seeing Luffy honestly coming into the cabin, Ace wiped the cold sweat off his brow. His perfect image was almost GG like this. We must find a way out quickly. Thinking of this, Ace immediately leaned out the domineering, knowledge color, overboard, and the scene in the thick fog clearly appeared in his mind. There is a play. Ace's eyes lit up, and he began to concentrate on finding a way out of the dense fog with his domineering spirit. The sailboat sailed in the dense fog for a long time, but there was only endless seawater in the range of Ace's arrogance. Just as his face became more and more ugly, suddenly a series of strange singing voices appeared from behind their boat. Yo ho 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 ho. Accompanied by the singing, a huge pirate ship slowly approached Ace's sailing ship. The pirate ship was tattered, as if it was one of those legendary ghost ships floating in the sea. Wow, ghost ship. Luffy rushed out of the cabin a long time ago, looking at the big ship exuding a terrifying atmosphere. He didn't have the slightest sign of fear, but excitedly jumped onto the side of the sailboat on the side of the ship. The ghost ship gradually came to the side of Ace's sailboat, and walked side by side with it. On the side of the ship, there was a human-shaped shadow holding black tea, singing an unknown song. Yo ho ho ho, Binks whine, this sends him to. Luffy watched the ghost ship slowly passing by, grinned excitedly. Ace, did you see it? The skeleton is singing. That's right. The singing figure turned out to be a skeleton. Ace's face has become weird. At first, he didn't react when he saw the thick fog. Now he finally knows where it is, and of course he knows who the skeleton is. This is obviously the Devil's Triangle Sea area. And that singing skeleton, look at that iconic afro, who is it not Brook? Ace. Sure enough, there are living skeletons. Luffy's eyes were already full of twinkling little stars, and he jumped up and down excitedly. Let's go immediately. After speaking, Luffy grabbed the fence next to the sailboat with both hands, stepped back step by step, stretched his arms extremely long, and was about to bounce himself towards the ghost ship. Whoosh. As soon as Luffy let go of his hands, the whole person flew out, but this kid hadn't been able to fully control his strength, and he deviated from the direction halfway through the flight, and he was about to fall into the sea. Ace patted his head helplessly, and said to himself, this brother is still so unreliable. Moonstep. Although he complained about Luffy in his mouth, Ace immediately stepped on the moonsteps and rushed into the air. After a few moves, they had already grabbed Luffy's collar, and then the two of them got taller and taller, and they landed on the deck of the ghost ship after a while. Watching the two of Ace fall from the air, the mandible of the explosive skull on the opposite side was about to fall off. Yo ho 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 ho. You guys are really amazing. Brook took off his top hat and gave a gentlemanly salute. I was really rude just now, but I didn't say hello to you when we met. I'm so happy. How many years have passed? I was really shocked to see a living person. It's a ghost ship besides a ghost ship. It's really scary. Brook held a cup of black tea, as if he had countless things to say. Look. He's talking. The afro-headed skeleton is talking. Luffy pointed at Brook, getting more excited, and tugged at the hem of Ace's clothes, with little stars shining again in his eyes. Ace covered his head and thought to himself, fortunately there are no women here, otherwise Brook would definitely want to see their underwear. Hey. Can you take a shit? Luffy leaned closer and asked seriously. Brook straightened his bow tie, wiped his shoes, and replied solemnly, yes, I'm shitting. Hello. Obviously the plot has changed because of me, okay? Why can't your conversation escape the stock of shit? And also why do you two have such a serious look, discussing such in-depth issues? Ace, invite him to be our partner. Luffy jumped up and hung around Ace's neck. Ace grabbed him by the collar and put him down, and said with a smile, if you do 1,000 more push-ups and 1,000 more squats every day, I agree. Okay. Without even thinking about it, Luffy grinned and agreed. Ace has not been idle these days. He has systematically trained Luffy with the method he learned from the Navy, trying to make him stronger faster. So far it seems that the effect is very good. Seeing that Luffy agreed to strengthen the training now, Ace nodded in satisfaction, walked up to Brook, and asked, Brook, would you like to go to sea with us? Brook was taken aback for a moment, and then took 2 steps back in fright. You. How do you know my name? I haven't introduced myself yet. Could it be? You have a crush on me. Boom. Ace jumped up and punched Brook on the head. Are you a fool? What are you talking about? Brook fell straight to the ground, a meaty bun bulging on his head at a speed visible to the naked eye. Ha 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 ha. This skeleton has bags on its head, just like me. Ha ha ha. Luffy laughed so hard that he couldn't straighten up. Ace suddenly felt that his future sailing life would be gloomy, and he looked up to the sky and sighed. How did he let himself meet these two treasures? Seeing that Luffy and Brook quickly became one with each other, Ace had given up resisting, and said helplessly, let's go, it's getting late, let's go back to the boat for dinner. Eat? Yo ho 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 ho. Brook's eyes lit up suddenly. Although he has no eyes. Speaking of which, it's been 38 years and I haven't eaten anything serious. What are you waiting for? Yo ho 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 ho. After finishing speaking, he jumped off the pirate ship first, and the moment he touched the seawater, he swung his feet quickly, and he started running on the sea like this. Wow. It's amazing. Luffy's eyes widened again, overwhelmed with excitement. Ace shook his head, grabbed Luffy by the collar, and led him back to the small sailboat from the air. Dinner. Yeel. Dinner. Yeel. Eat. 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 Luffy and Brook sat at the dining table, knocking on the cutlery, as if they couldn't wait. With earplugs in his ears, Ace didn't want to pay attention to them at all, took out the ingredients, and simply made 3 huge fried rice. Thump. Throwing the plate on the table, Ace said angrily, shut up, eat. Wow. There was a sound of tableware and plates colliding, and after 2 minutes, several people had wiped out a large portion of fried rice. Hiccup. Brook burped for a long time, and said with a satisfied face, my belly is going to fill up after eating. Although I don't have a belly, yo ho 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 ho. Brook opened his arms and said happily, dang, clang, clang, skeleton joke. Yeel. Skeleton joke. Luffy nearly lost his eyes laughing. But Mr. Ace, your fried rice is actually a bit salty. Brook suddenly turned to Ace and said. Boom. Brook tilted his head, and there was another bag on his head. It's good to eat some, but dare to pick and choose? With a dark face, Ace clapped his hands and asked, Brook, the meal is over. Do you know how to get out of here? I've been wandering in this misty sea for 38 years, so I think today is a good day, yo ho ho. Brook looked at Ace and said, not only did I have a decent meal today, but I am so happy to see you. For me, you are my joy, so happy, Yo ho ho ho. But I'm sorry, I don't know the way out. Ace was silent. Having watched the full anime, he understood Brooke's heartache better. Alone, drifting at sea for decades, how lonely it is. What kind of belief is needed to survive such loneliness? So Ace was not disappointed because Brooke didn't know the way, but suddenly found that Brooke's shadow was still there, so he knew that Brooke hadn't met Moria's devil spinnaker yet. Rumbling, as soon as Ace thought of this, he suddenly felt a violent jolt of the sailboat. No way? Is my crow's mouth so smart recently? Ace murmured to himself with a strange expression, then immediately rushed out of the cabin and looked out of the boat. Sure enough, their ship had been swallowed by a huge mouth, and a huge three-masted sailing ship formed by islands had appeared in front of them. What is this? Brooke and Luffy also walked out of the cabin, and after seeing this magnificent island, both of them opened their mouths. After the initial surprise, Ace calmed down quickly, and a thought suddenly popped up in his mind. This sea area shrouded in thick fog obviously needs a powerful navigator to lead them out, and a year ago, he killed Absalom under Moria's command on the Great Route. This means that Moria must have a navigator who has a way to get out of the Devil's Triangle. The world government's Shichibukai plan will not be implemented until 14 years into the Great Pirate Era, that is, next year, so Moria is nothing more than a slightly stronger pirate. So why don't you meet this Moria and find out that navigator? Thinking of this, a smile appeared on the corner of Ace's mouth, and he turned to Luffy and said, Luffy, do you want to take risks? I want. Luffy's eyes lit up, and he took out his backpack in a flash. The bag was already full of canned food that could be eaten directly. Haha. Let's go. Ace mentioned Luffy again, but before leaving, he said to Brooke, Brooke, I will leave the boat to you. I will take Luffy to play. Yo ho ho, you can leave it to me without worry, Brooke said while clenching the crutch in his hand. Ace nodded. He knew that the crutch was actually a stabbing sword, and besides being a musician, Brooke was also a powerful swordsman. Let's go. The sea surface of tens of meters was not at all challenging in front of Ace. Even with Luffy under his arm, after a few steps, the two had safely landed on the main island in front of them. Click. Click. As soon as the two of Ace landed, they stepped on a piece of weathered bones. Upon closer inspection, the surrounding ground was actually paved with white bones. Faced with such a terrifying environment, the faces of the two of them did not change at all. Ace had already experienced several battles, so his heart was as firm as iron. But Luffy, this kid, was completely out of his mind. After falling to the ground, he picked up a skull and put it on his head as a mask. Hey, Ace. Do you think I look like Brooke? Ace looked at him, was silent for a while, and finally choked out a sentence. As long as you are happy. The island was also shrouded in a faint mist. Just as Ace and Luffy looked at the bones on the ground, 6 blood-red pupils suddenly lit up in the mist around them. Gollum. The low roar of the beast rang in my ears, and a creature with 3 heads slowly walked out of the mist. Wow. Whoa. Ow. Taking a closer look, those 3 heads are clearly 3 dogs. And many more. Why is there a fox head mixed in with 2 dog heads? The original weird atmosphere was destroyed by your hybrid head, okay. Ace. A dog with 3 heads. Let's invite him to be our partner. Yo ho ho. Luffy was wearing a skull mask, and even imitated Brooke's laughter. Ace rolled his eyes, but he knew that this strange creature in front of him was a zombie made by Moria. How could he take it away? Luffy, stop messing around. I don't want a zombie as a partner. But if you can defeat him, within the scope of this small island, I can let you play with him for a while. Ace deliberately tested Luffy. Okay, look at mine. Luffy was easily satisfied. After hearing Ace's words, he immediately looked at the 3-headed dog with little stars in his eyes. And the 3-headed dog, who was still aggressive just now, looked at the light in Luffy's eyes, and for some reason there was a trace of cold sweat on his head, and an ominous premonition rose in his heart. Rubber pistol. Boom. Rubber axe. Boom. Rubber. Enough is enough, Luffy. If you fight again, there will be no more fun. Seeing that Luffy still wanted to continue, Ace was taken aback, and quickly pulled him back from behind. Sure enough, Luffy's thinking was still so confused. Woo. The 3-headed dog shrugged and pulled its tail, looking extremely aggrieved. When it was hit for the first time, it wanted to surrender, but the kid opposite didn't give him a chance at all. I think it has 3 heads. If you don't hit it with 1 head, you can't beat it. Luffy tilted his head and said innocently, wait a minute, it's still a little short. Seems to make sense. The three-headed dog was so frightened that its tail was clamped. Seeing Luffy raised his fist again, a flash of inspiration suddenly appeared in his head in despair. Boom. Boom. The two dog heads hit the fox on the head hard at the same time, making two muffled bangs. Wong. Wong. The three-headed dog put on a shy face and leaned over in a flattering manner, meaning, "Is this enough?" Only the head of the fox was crying silently, drooping his head. "I'll go, is that okay?" Ace was shocked by Luffy's series of operations. When Ace and Luffy rode the three-headed dog and slowly walked into the depths of the island. Brook was holding a cup of black tea, leaning leisurely on the side of the boat, humming his song, Bink's Wine. Although he now only has a face full of bones, he can see the joy in his heart. After taking a sip of black tea, Brook said comfortably, "What a lucky day." But at this moment, his expression suddenly became stiff, and was quickly replaced by panic. He took a few steps back in fear, and bumped into the other side of the ship with a plop. Brook stammered. "Ghost? Ghost? No. I'm most afraid of ghosts." He didn't seem to understand at all. In fact, his own skull face was much scarier than a ghost. And directly opposite Brook, a white transparent ghost circled over the small sailboat, and then drifted slowly into the depths of the island. Call. Seeing the ghost drift away, Brook breathed a sigh of relief and stood up on crutches. Puff. But in the next second, the small sailboat was pushed by the raging waves and bumped into a huge spider web. Hey. Brook was suddenly startled and raised his hands high. What's going on? He just swore that he would keep an eye on the boat, but after a while, why was the boat entangled in spider webs? And many more. What the hell is this spider web? Who has ever seen a spider web that can entangle a boat? Brook walked to the bow in a panic, pulled out the sword in the crutch, and slashed at the spider web. But they found that these spider webs were not only strong, but also covered with mucus on the surface, so they couldn't be cut at all. But Brook is a person who takes promises very seriously, so since he has promised Ace, he must ensure the safety of the sailboat. So even though the spider webs could not be removed quickly, Brook continued to cut off the spider webs with his sword persistently. Swish. But when he focused all his attention on the spider web in front of him, 3 or 4 spiders with mouse heads suddenly descended from above the sailboat. Swish. Swish. The spiders were about to spray their webs towards Brook, but they only had time to see Brook swinging a knife with one hand, crossing their backs. The spiders were a little puzzled, because they clearly saw Brook's sword slashing at themselves, so why didn't they react at all? Have you ever heard that old saying? Before they could answer, Brook continued. Some people say that as long as the sword is drawn fast enough, the person who is cut will be unconscious. Brook's calm words reached the spiders' ears, making their skin crawl all of a sudden. Nose song sanding dovetail cut, bass. The stabbing sword in Brook's hand was suddenly inserted into the scabbard. And behind him, a sword mark suddenly appeared in the middle of the 3 spiders' bodies, splitting their bodies in 2. At this moment, Brook, who had only bones left in his body, suddenly gave off a chilling aura of a master. When he looked up at the weird spiders on the spider web that were about to rush over, the spiders suddenly stopped at the same time, as if they were afraid of Brook. There is a beautiful woman behind you. A spider was afraid of being cut by Brook, so it subconsciously said something casually, hoping to divert Brook's attention. Where? But Brook turned around quickly and looked back, with an eager expression of a senior pervert on his face, looking around for the beauty behind him. The master temperament just now disappeared in an instant. Whoosh. Whizzing. The spiders were planning to run away, but when they saw Brook's performance, they would not let go of this opportunity. They immediately swarmed up and wrapped Brook tightly with their spider webs. Although Brook was struggling nonstop, he couldn't break free from these solid spider webs at all, and could only be dragged into the depths of the misty island by these spiders. You liars. Brook's voice was melodious, mixed with the disappointment and pain of not seeing the beautiful woman. At this moment, in the depths of the terrifying 3-masted sailing ship, in the castle that was used as the main mast, a transparent ghost emerged from the castle wall and merged into the body of a 12 or 13-year-old little loli. This little loli wears pink twin ponytails, and a small crown is crookedly worn on her head. At this moment, she is holding a small red umbrella in one hand, and a small umbrella in the other. Cute bear puppet. Seemingly getting some interesting information from the ghost that merged into her body, the little loli jumped to the front of the main hall of the castle. Boom boom boom. Little loli knocked hard on the palace gate and shouted, Moria, Moria, open the door. Crunch, the heavy door was slowly opened, and little Loli ran in bouncing around. In the center of the hall, Mariah was lying on his huge throne. Hey he. Isn't this my cute little princess Perona? If Moria's enemies are here, you will be surprised after seeing his expression and doubt your life. Is this person with a kind smile on his face the cruel and bloodthirsty Moria in their eyes? Moria. Last time you said that you would give me a super big bear doll that can run and move. Why haven't you yet? Perona put her hands on her hips and pouted her small mouth angrily. Okay, it's not pretty when you're angry. Moria stood up and comforted, I'll ask Hobak to make one for you today. Come on. Exist. Immediately, a puppet zombie came forward, knelt down to one side, so respectful that he didn't dare to make any unnecessary movements. You must know that a few days ago, Lord Moria was in a bad mood and tore a few of his subordinates apart. Go and inform Hobak that you must make a bear doll for me before 12 o'clock today. Moria's bitter voice contained an inexplicable majesty. Yes, master. The puppet zombie walked out of the hall backwards, and then let out a long breath. I said, brother, I think Master Moria is very kind to Lord Perona. Why are you so afraid of him? Just as the puppet zombie walked out of the hall and was about to set off, someone immediately asked. Shish. Dude, are you new here? How do you know? I just came here today. The puppet zombie showed such an expression, and then whispered, Master Perona is different from us. After all, we are just zombies. Once the master is unhappy, he can kill us at will. And Moria-sama adopted Perona when she was very young, and it can be said that she brought her up. Their relationship is the same as that of a biological father and daughter. That's why only Lady Perona dares to talk to the master like that. In our pirate group, even Lord Hogabok is inferior to Lord Perona. Hearing this, the new zombie nodded solemnly, planning to be more careful in the future, so as not to offend this Lord Perona. He, my little princess, are you satisfied this time? Moria smiled and sat back on his throne, and reached out for someone to prepare a slightly smaller seat beside him. It's almost there. Perona wrinkled her little nose with a happy smile on her face. However, Moria, I just found out that 3 people broke into our boat. Perona hugged the bear, sat down on the seat, tilted her head and thought for a while, and then said, It seems that there are one as the ace you said you wanted to catch some time ago. Oh? Moria's eyes lit up, and a cruel smile appeared on his face. Did that kid come to the door by himself? Talara. As soon as Mariah's voice fell, a huge spider with a monkey head descended from the ceiling. You bring 500 rat-headed spiders and catch them all for me. Moria ordered, I'll leave them all to you. Monkey. Talara let out a series of strange laughter, and said, Respected master, my subordinates have already caught one person, please wait a moment. Haha, you did a good job. Clap Lala. The sound of a series of chains running sounded, and then under Moria's gaze, a dark coffin was transported into the hall along the iron chain. Thump. The coffin fell to the ground, and the lid flipped over, revealing Brooke inside, motionless. Moria's laughter stopped abruptly. What the hell is this fucking skeleton? Are you kidding me? Moria glared at Talara with a gloomy face, or do you think I didn't see my dead body? Want to give me some insight? At this time, Talara also had 10,000 horses running past in his heart. Didn't those subordinates say that they had captured a powerful swordsman? What is lying in the coffin in front of me? He knew that if he couldn't explain clearly today, he would probably kneel directly. Number 236. Come out. Talala roared angrily. Immediately, a rat-headed spider numbered 236 jumped out, and said nervously, Master, to wake him up, you need to say a spell. Huh. Mariah's face was a little ugly. The rat-headed spider didn't dare to keep it any longer, so it immediately cleared its throat, pointed at Brooke, and shouted loudly. There are beauties outside. What the hell is this spell? Mariah is about to go crazy. Where is it? Where is it? Brooke, who was still motionless, squirmed and jumped out of the coffin even though he was tightly bound by the spider silk. When he remembered that he was still pretending to be a corpse, everyone at the scene had already focused their attention on him. It was a little embarrassing for a while. It's so easy to see through, the acting is a bit stiff. Ha. Ha ha. Brooke laughed dryly twice, then lay motionless on the ground with another plop, and loaded up the corpse again. Still pretending? It's late. Moria was so angry that he grabbed Brooke into his hand and raised it high. Turn on the light. As soon as the words fell, a searchlight shone from behind Brooke, casting a long shadow on the ground. Puff. Under Brooke's horrified gaze, Mariah actually tore his shadow off the ground, and then took out a huge pair of scissors. With a click, his shadow was directly cut off. At the same time, Brooke tilted his head and passed out directly, while his shadow fell into Moria's hands, struggling continuously. He. Is he a swordsman? Then the corpse of Ryoma I brought back from Wano country can finally come in handy. Moria grinned, showing sharp teeth, and ordered. Talara, I leave it to you. Take this bone away, and then go and bring the other two. I can't wait to activate number 900. Yes. This time, Talara and the rat-headed spiders picked up the unconscious Brooke, and quickly disappeared into the shadows with a swish. Hey. Moria. Perona is going too, and I'm strong too. Perona arched her small arms seriously, trying to show off her muscles, but found that her arms were only soft. A little embarrassed, but still insisted. I don't care, I want to play. Perona, be obedient. Those people are fierce. Moria persuaded while stuffing Brooke's shadow into Ryoma's body. Ryoma, who was originally just a corpse, suddenly opened his eyes, picked up the big sharp knife, Chu Shui, in his hand, and stepped out of the coffin, exuding an aggressive aura belonging to a great swordsman. Yo ho ho ho, Perona's eyes lit up, and she immediately said, then let him follow me, I'll be safe. Moria hesitated for a moment, but remembering that Ryoma was once the strongest swordsman in the Wano country, and his strength was even enough to kill a real dragon, Moria nodded in agreement and said, that's fine, but you bring 3 more zombie generals. If you really can't capture that ace alive, it threatens your safety. Mariah's eyes flickered fiercely again, and he said grimly, then kill them all directly. Moria would only show kindness when facing Perona, and he was still that cruel pirate when dealing with others. Good. Perona happily responded, and with the revived dragon horse, bounced towards the outside of the castle. At this time, Ace and Lu Fei had already rode a 3-headed dog into a cemetery exuding a gloomy atmosphere. Ace. There are a lot of tombstones here. Luffy is sitting on the 3-headed dog, with 2 legs hanging outside, dangling. He is full of curiosity about everything on the island. And Ace understood that although the cemetery in front of him looked peaceful, it was full of zombies under the ground, so he had a whim, smiled and said to Luffy, Luffy, do you want to watch zombies dance? I want it. Haha. Luffy's eyes lit up immediately, and he shouted. Dance. Dance. The corner of Ace's mouth slanted up, and without a sound, the purple flame centered on them, spiraling outward, and spread to the entire cemetery in an instant. The high temperature of the flames scorched the ground, and after a while, the underground zombies couldn't bear it anymore, and crawled out of the tomb one by one. Hot. So hot. The flames burned the zombies, and they jumped up and down in a panic. The gloomy cemetery seemed to be transformed into a disco in an instant. It's really a graveyard jumping disco. The 3-headed dog was sweating profusely, and his body was shaking with fright. What kind of player is sitting on his body? Why is one more terrifying than the other? The 3-headed dog just wants to ask now. Darling, are you 2 devils? The burning flames finally turned the zombies into ashes, and countless shadows shot up from the ashes, breaking through the fog and scattered in all directions. Huh. Little San. Why are you trembling? Luffy had already given the 3-headed dog a very indecent name, and then showed a suddenly realized expression, haha. I know, you must want to be together to dance. Kindness? After hearing Lu Fei's words, the 3-headed dog's eyes widened suddenly, and it exerted all its strength to control the trembling. I want to dance too. What a joke. Didn't you see those, dancing, dudes, all the *****ing souls? The 3 heads of the 3-headed dog shake their heads more violently than the other. Ace watched dumbfoundingly. He didn't really want to watch the zombies dance, but because those people whose shadows were taken away by Moria could only live in the shadows without seeing the sun, so he just wanted to do something good. Alright, Little San, let's go. Ace patted the 3-headed dog on the head. As if the 3-headed dog had been pardoned, he didn't care about what Ace called him, and immediately wagged his tail to show his favor, and carried the 2 of them to the outside of the cemetery. I was also relieved. It seems that there is no need to dance. Very nice. Walking out of the cemetery and passing through a forest, a hospital already overgrown with weeds appeared in front of them. The 3-headed dog deliberately slowed down when he came here. He knew that this hospital was Hogback's territory. Normally, he would not even dare to approach here. After being discovered, he might be rebuilt. I go. 1 step, 2 steps. It was about to cry. How I wished that the pair of brothers on the head could understand what he meant. Let him stop quickly. Little San, I think your steps are very spiritual, very suitable to be a dancer. Ace's calm voice floated from his back and entered its ears. What a dancer. The three-headed dog froze for a moment. If he went to the hospital now and was caught by Hagabok, that would be something later, but if he was still procrastinating like this, he believed in this Ace, and he would probably send it to heaven right now. Da. With small steps, the three-headed dog directly smashed open the door of the hospital, and rushed into a corridor covered with murals. Roar. The moment they stepped into the corridor, the characters in the original mural suddenly rushed out of the frame, and at the same time swung their fangs and claws at Ace and Luffy. The three-headed dog mourned for them. Call. The fire flashed, and the corridor instantly became clean. Ace, you are very powerful now, Luffy said in admiration. After being praised by his younger brother, Ace was in a good mood immediately, but he still had to put on his elder brother's majesty and said, you will train according to my requirements, and you will become so powerful. Okay. I will definitely become stronger. Then I will become the One Piece, Luffy said firmly. Yo ho ho ho. You really are a kid with dreams. In the depths of the dark corridor, there was suddenly the sound of clear footsteps, followed by a vague figure at the end of the corridor. Haha, Brook, is that you? As soon as Luffy heard his unique laugh, he subconsciously thought it was Brook. But Ace's expression gradually turned serious. In his knowledge, the person opposite him was dressed as a Japanese samurai. Although he had the same laughter as Brook, he was obviously another person. Ryoma. Ace recognized the black knife, Chu Shui, in this man's hand at a glance, so if this man is not the dragon-slaying warrior Ryoma, who else could it be? And he is here, which means that Brook has been cut by Moria. It's careless. Ace touched his nose, just forgot to explain the precautions to Brook. However, as long as you kill him, the shadow can go back. Ace stood up and jumped off the back of the three-headed dog. His body seemed to have no weight, and he fell lightly a few meters away. He murmured, I also want to see how much strength you, the legendary swordsman, still have. Luffy, I'll leave those little spiders around to you. Ace flipped his right hand, took out Slayer, and solemnly looked at Ryoma who was walking in. Little spider. The three-headed dog was a little dazed, and looked around, but there was nothing around. Leave it all to me. Hee hee. It has to be said that Luffy has a natural fighting instinct, so he threw his fist into the shadows of the surrounding corridors without thinking. Rubber, machine gun. The moment the dense fist shadows blasted past, dense rustling sounds suddenly sounded in the shadows, and the next moment, countless rat-headed spiders suddenly crawled out of the corner that was originally empty. Numb. But Luffy's punch was faster, and the mice that crawled slower were submerged in the shadow of Luffy's fist in an instant. They couldn't even struggle, and they had already turned into pulp. Several black shadows drilled out of their bodies and flew out of the window. Boom boom boom. Luffy didn't intend to stop at all, and all kinds of moves rained down on the spiders, instantly crushing them. Seeing Luffy's performance, Ace smiled with satisfaction. It seems that the special training for Luffy these days has begun to work. Then, Ryoma Dono, let's start too. While Ace was speaking, the armed arrogance had already covered the blade of Zumo, turning it into a hard black blade. Yo ho ho, is Ryoma my name in life? Seeing you, I feel a familiar feeling, and my body seems to be excited. Ryoma's eye was wrapped with a bandage, and he slowly pulled it out. Out of autumn water. A serious expression finally appeared on his face. Ryoma. Do you want my help? Hoo. Little lowly Perona was followed by 3 fully armed zombie generals, holding her little red umbrella, floating in the air like this. As much as I'd love to see your panties, you're too small to fit. Pervert. I didn't mean to help you. Perona was so angry, she just wanted to help Ryoma deal with Ace, not to show him his underwear. Yo ho ho, that's really a pity, but this is my battle alone. After Ryoma said this, he didn't hesitate anymore, and rushed to Ace in an instant, and slashed him on the head. Clang. St knife went up to meet him, and the 2 black knives collided suddenly, setting off a strong airwave, and the floor made of blue bricks seemed to turn into soft cotton cloth, shaking like sea waves. Click. Click. The moment the 2 separated, countless cracks suddenly appeared on the wall of the corridor. Night song straight through. Readjusting his body shape, Long Ma held up autumn water, pointed the tip of the knife at Ace, and stabbed forward suddenly. A ray of sword energy rushed in front of Ace in an instant. Faced with this blow, Ace's arm seemed to disappear directly, and, slaying demon, struck on the ray of sword energy at the last moment. Boom. The sword energy suddenly changed direction and rushed straight up, piercing the hard bluestone roof in just this way. The cold moonlight poured down from the hole, illuminating the faces of the two of them. You were very good. Ryoma had no lips, and his teeth were exposed to the air. He looked a little ferocious, but now he showed a smile of appreciation. Hey. Ryoma. It's obvious that you were better. Why are you praising that kid? Perona floated in the air, crossed her waist, and said a little dissatisfied. Ryoma didn't respond to her, but Perona's eyes widened suddenly, and behind Ryoma, an X-shaped sword mark suddenly appeared on the smooth roof. Immediately afterwards, accompanied by a rumbling sound, another hole with a diameter of nearly 10 meters appeared on the originally solid roof. The move just now was amazingly equal. This kid can also wield sword energy? Perona couldn't help shouting out, but she heard from Moria that a swordsman who can wield sword energy must have been immersed in the sword for many years. He can even be called a master of swordsmen. But the kid in front of him looks younger than himself, right? How did he do that? Revolutionary dance, assault. The battle between Ace and Ryoma would not stop just like that. Ryoma moved with the sword and rushed in front of Ace at an incredible speed in an instant. A layer of swords formed on the tip of Autumn Water's sword. The samurai sword has not yet. When it stabs in front of the face, it will make people feel a burst of pain on the skin. From the moment Ace saw Ryoma, he had already decided to have a pure swordsmanship duel with this swordsman. It is precisely because of this spirit of constant challenge that he has made such great progress in just over a year. Prick. A simple word, but it seems to contain the sweat of Ace, who endured the boring and repeated practice every day. A layer of almost materialized sword appeared on the killing demon, and instantly greeted him. Ryoma's attack. Ping. The swords and swords clearly carried terrifying force, but when they collided, there was only a crisp sound. The sound was obviously not loud, but to everyone's ears, it sounded like thunder. A circle of cyan and purple sword energy scattered in all directions, instantly cutting a circle of neat cuts on the walls on all sides of the corridor. Rumbling. Master Perona, let's go out first, the hospital seems to be collapsing. Behind Perona, a zombie general said nervously. He is very self-aware. The battle between these two people in front of him, they can't get in the way at all. However, the battle between Ace and Ryoma was too fierce. In this short period of time, the two had already matched several moves, and the flying sword energy was dazzling, constantly destroying the structure of the house. Pung. Plop, plop. Gravels continued to fall from the roof, clearing out a large area of rat-headed spiders in an instant. The three-headed dog is really very spiritual at this time, turned around and was about to turn around and run out of the hospital building, but when he turned around, he hesitated for a moment, then gritted his teeth, and picked up Luffy, who wanted to continue fighting. With his head also he rushed out without looking back. Ace, who was in the battle, sensed this scene, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. I didn't expect this three-headed dog to be so loyal. Continue. Devil Demon. In the hands of Ace, the speed of slashing is getting faster and faster, and the traces across the air are becoming more and more smooth and beautiful. Clang. Clank. The figures of Ace and Ryoma have long been indistinguishable, only the dazzling sparks of sword energy when the swords clash, telling others how fierce their battle is. Boom. The structure of the hospital was finally destroyed to the limit, collapsing into ruins, and the dust splashed was 10 meters high. Whoosh. Whoosh. The next moment, two figures suddenly rushed out of the dust. It was Ace and Ryoma who had been fighting for dozens of rounds. Huh. Ryoma panted heavily, but a cheerful smile appeared on his face. Thank you, for letting me experience the fun of fighting in my lifetime again. Can you tell me your name? Ace's swordsmanship is actually not as good as Ryoma's, but his physical strength is stronger than Ryoma's, so he doesn't feel exhausted. You also deserve my respect, Your Excellency Ryoma. My name is Ace. Okay. Your Excellency Ace, the next move will be my full blow, please be solemn. Ryoma flipped his wrist and jumped up. No song sanding dovetail cut. At this moment, Ryoma seemed to be the warrior in front of him again, who cut the flying dragon in two, and the autumn water, in his hand let out cheers. Facing a swordsman's blow with conviction, if Ace didn't use his true strength, he would undoubtedly be insulting the opponent. Ace can't do it. Stacking flame /40 layers. Holding the flame-wrapped devil demon, Ace's figure soared into the sky, passing Ryoma instantly. The two fell to the ground at the same time, and the picture seemed to freeze in place. The next moment, an incision suddenly appeared in Ryoma's abdomen, and then, purple flames ignited from the wound, covering Ryoma's whole body in an instant. Puff. Ryoma still stood firmly, spitting out a mouthful of blood, but in the flames, a wry smile appeared on his face. Am I still lost? Let me, a samurai, taste failure for the first time? So sad. With a flick of his hand, he absorbed the flames from Zenmo back into his body. Ace didn't comfort him, but paused and said, I really want to meet you when you're alive. This sentence, sincerely, represents a strong person's recognition of another strong person. Ha 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 ha. Ryoma laughed out loud this time, and even let out his own voice. It's been a long time since I've been this happy, so take this knife as a gift from me, Ace. Whoosh. With a wave of Ryoma's hand, he threw the big sharp knife, Chu Shui, directly at Ace. Ace took it casually, feeling a little emotional in his heart. He knew Ryoma was leaving. Sure enough, with a contented laugh, Ryoma raised his head and opened his mouth, and a black shadow came out of his mouth and flew towards the east of the island. HMPH. It's useless. Among the ruins, Perona seemed to be a real ghost, unstoppable by matter at all, and directly drilled out of the masonry fragments. Behind him, several zombie generals were knocked dizzy, pushed the stone slab away, and barely stood up. It seems that we still have to rely on the invincible Perona. Perona raised her chin proudly, pointed at Ace from a distance, and snorted coldly, Mini ghost bomb. As soon as the words fell, countless little ghosts the size of fists got out of his body and flocked to Ace.